Chapter 361. I used to be a swordsman. Now, I use a hammer. If Tony's knowledge was a little wider, he could read more books and cut people less, he would be able to recognize what Joan's swollen right arm was. In this sea there is such an island, which is full of volcanoes and towering rocks that are heavily weathered. Because of the relationship between the UV continental plate, there are frequent volcanic eruptions and large earthquakes. And whenever such a natural disaster occurs, countless stones will fall from the heads of all living things. It sounds ridiculous, but this is the world of One Piece, where anything is possible. It was in those harsh conditions that groups of creatures died out on the island, where coarse sand and gravel were the main theme, and there was no green color all year round. There is only a group of sea turtles, but they thrive there, and even the group is getting bigger and bigger. They are named lava turtles because of the large and small volcanoes and magma craters on the island. It can be said that from the day they broke out of their shells, this group of lava turtles experienced the days of being constantly smashed by things, which can be said to be quite hard. According to the principle of Darwin's theory of evolution, which is far away from the Earth, in order to adapt to the environment, these lava turtles have gradually evolved a very resistant ability. Adult lava turtles can even carry hundreds of meters hard a ton of boulders dropped from the sky without getting hurt. It's terrifying inside and out. And what makes them do such incredible things is the thick tortoise shell that accompanies them from birth. Not only is its hardness comparable to Halu stone, but its unique internal structure can greatly reduce the impact of being hit into the body. Apart from being bulky, it is a perfect shield material. It is a war preparation material sought after by many forces, used to forge parts and components on large-scale machinery. When Jones was the boss of Crisvia, because he couldn't leave, he put a bounty on for 2 years before finally capturing a lava turtle. After eating it, it became Jones' toughest shield. It's just because it's too bulky, and once it's transformed, it will be easily targeted by the enemy, so Jones doesn't usually like to use this form. But in the face of Tony's dense sword attack, this form seems perfect. Especially now that he can still do separate partial transformations, it looks even more perfect. When a swordsman can't cut through the enemy's shield, and can't rely on the speed advantage to attack the enemy's weak point, the scene is the same as Tony is now. Jingle. Bang. The gongs and drums are beating, and the sword energy is buzzing. Tony, who is fully on fire, turned into black lines, constantly circling and attacking around Jones. Every attack could bring a series of sparks. The bone coon after the hardening of the armed color was so sharp that even the ground was violent. In the attack, a bottomless ravine was split open. But even so, he still couldn't cut off Jones' turtle shield, and even said he couldn't even leave a scar on him. Several times he pretended to abandon Jones to chase Drake, and then turned back to attack, but was seen through by the seasoned Jones with his rich experience, and he returned again and again without success. When the natural killer met the old hunter, the scene was so stalemate. However, Jones is not really that easy. In order to resist Tony's faster attacks, he had to give up part of his strength and turn his feet into the hind limbs of some kind of feline to increase his flexibility. The long lizard tail that extends from the back of the butt provides him with a certain amount of agility while maintaining balance. Boom. After another miss, Tony fled far away and looked impatiently at Jones, who looked different in front of him. Leopard, lizard, turtle, cow, what the hell are you? PFFT. With a pair of vertical pupils widened, the Tauren Jones snorted, and the ugly and cute cow's face unfolded, revealing a big smiling face. Guess. Hee hee, you guess I can't guess. Bah. Tony almost uttered the lines that Loya had ridiculed him, spit a pool of saliva, and he held the hilt of Bone Coon in both hands. Guess what? When Lao Su cuts you open, I'll know what you are. Ouch, it's so scary, so scary. Jones took out the nose of the bull with only 3 thick fingers, and looked at Tony with disdain. You didn't even cut off my hair after beating for half an hour, and you still want to kill me. What a joke. But then again, is your navy really so idle? An opponent you can't catch is so desperate. If I were you, I would definitely give up the opponent in front of me and chase that one traitor Drake, how stupid is it to waste time on me to make such a decision? Click. Tony had blue veins on his forehead, itching for Kiba, whom Jones hated. Go after Drake. Do you still have the face to say this? With the speed that you can show with a tortoise shell, if I choose to leave, do you dare to say that I will be dropped? Being caught up by you is not the same as being deadlocked, repeating the current process. So, stop talking nonsense. Look at lousy hacking you today. After speaking, the two were almost out of breath, and Tony flew up again, hitting Jones with a vertical strike. It's useless to say, can you have a snack? Jones sneered, raised his shield and greeted him. Seeing that Jones was blocked by his shield, a scheming smile appeared on Tony's mouth. Then, clumps of yuhi-colored flesh broke through his skin and quickly wrapped around the bone coon. When those flesh and blood stopped moving, what Tony held in his hand was no longer a sword, but a huge bloody axe with an exaggerated shape. Just one sentence, for the tribe. With the same strength, the impact of the thin long sword and the axe at the impact point is not at the same level. Unwittingly, Jones held up his shield and suffered the blow of the axe head-on. So. Bang! In the face of this completely different force, Jones only felt his arm tingle for a while, and the moment his body was pressed, he bent down, almost flashing his old Montenegrin waist for more than 30 years. Hold the grass. But it wasn't over yet. As soon as the blow was successful, I knew from the feel that the axe didn't cut the shell of the tortoise. Tony turned around abruptly, the weapon in his hand circled in a circle, and slammed into Jones' defenseless waist. The reason it was smashed was because the axe in his hand continued to deform as he swung it, and then turned into a yuhi-colored sledgehammer inlaid with water chestnuts. The hammer bus. More weight, more power. With the inertia brought by turning around, Tony's attack can be described as extremely fierce, and he must suffer internal injuries if he is hit. It's not impossible for the bones to be broken. At the critical moment, Jones resisted the pain, moved the turtle shell down, and blocked the body and the sledgehammer with a corner. Bang! The dull and loud sound that made people want to vomit blood echoed in the empty desert, and even the sea in the distance swayed in circles of ripples. Jones, who was severely beaten, spit out a mouthful of old blood in an instant, and he was smashed and flew upside down. Woo, hoo. Waving the blood-colored sledgehammer and making a whimpering sound in the air, Tony put it on his shoulders and smiled at the place where Jones flew over. I used to be a swordsman. Now, I am a killer. Chapter 362. Believe in Sengoku Sama's plan. 3 sand dunes in a row were smashed and turned into yellow sand flying in the sky. Jones was lying in the big hole he smashed, and the feeling of tightness in his chest made him vomit several mouthfuls of blood. The power of this hammer is too terrifying. If it is really hit, Jones will have to break several bones. Fortunately, at the last minute, Jones blocked the most dangerous first wave of shocks with his tortoise shell, and the sledgehammer hit him only after the shock was slowed down. Otherwise, if you use your body to fight hard, the end will not be too wonderful. But even so, the terrifying impact knocked him far away, and he didn't slow down for a long time. Grip the grass. I'm careless again. Jones was ashamed, and sadly wanted to find a crack to get in. Alabasta is its own nemesis. Before, he was full of confidence to go to the sand crocodile to trouble him, but he was negligent and was almost sucked by the other party. This is not to say, and now facing Tony, he is still full of confidence, but it hurts so much to be beaten in the face. From the moment Tony appeared, he knew the identity of the other party. After all, after rushing to Albana, Loya can trust the other party to hand Zepha to the guy he guards, and there are only a few to count. The only one who fits the characteristics is the Tony Mill who stayed in the New World with Shanks. However, Jones didn't think that the guy who entered the elite camp at the same time as Loya was of a high level, even if he stayed by Yuhifa's side for half a year, so he always fought Tony with a playful mentality. Even if Tony later showed a level that made him vigilant, this mentality just turned into the mentality of the elders looking at the juniors who were successful in their studies. But he didn't expect that the other party still retained his strength. It directly caused Jones to suffer heavy losses and face Jiangdong's elders without face. After all, as the once famous Hunter Jones, only defending and not attacking anything does not fit his character at all. Standing up slowly, Jones rubbed his stuffy chest and stared viciously in Tony's direction. "Humph, you forced me. I was going to play with you, but now it seems that I have to give you a little bit of horsepower." Unlike when he was trapped by K. Rockdale, Jones was not seriously injured at the moment, and he still had enough strength to fight back. Taking a deep breath, the deformed parts of Jones' body slowly returned to normal, and then his eyes narrowed, and a majestic momentum radiated violently. Just as he was about to go to Cannibal Island to hunt down Drake, Tony stopped abruptly and looked at the direction Jones flew out. "Cut. Are you bothered? You still have to fight." The reason why a sneak attack is called a sneak attack is that it is effective when the enemy is unprepared. Now that Jones knows his means, what awaits him will definitely be a tougher fight than before. He still has trump cards, but who can guarantee that Jones, who is rushing aggressively now, will be gone? After all, judging from this momentum, the other party was not seriously injured at all. Instead, like an enraged beast, it became more and more dangerous. Holding the long sword tightly, Tony held his breath and put on a fighting stance. Bang! A pile of huge sand dunes exploded with an unknown force, and a huge shadow came to Tony's side almost instantly in the yellow sand flying all over the sky. So fast! Tony's eyes narrowed, and he was about to retreat, but a strange force attached to his arm holding the sword, then pressed it back to his chest, and then attached to his profile. Boom! There was no pain, Tony just felt like someone was ringing a bell in his head, and he was immediately stunned. Then, he turned into a cannonball and flew out fiercely. Boom! The sea in the distance exploded with a large spray of water, and the rising sea water directly rolled into the sky, knocking down a seagull coiling around the coast. In the splash of water, Jones stretched out his big furry hand to wipe his nose, and spat out blood in disdain. Bah! Would you give lousy a try again? But at this moment, Tony couldn't hear him. Because of his severe injuries, his body's protective mechanism forced him into a coma. The dense granulation wraps it up, swallowing the seawater and engulfing the surrounding sea fish, ensuring the oxygen supply in the water and restoring the nutrients he needs. Not far away is the following navy, so Jones is not worried that the other party will drown in the sea. After humming, the tall silver-colored gorilla turned around and ran, leaving huge footprints on the beach. It was not until Turtle Island let out a low roar and began to slowly leave the coast, the Navy was suddenly alarmed, and panicked and prepared to go into the sea to pick up Tony. Just when the Navy rescued Tony, at the moment Albana, Loya has also completed a simple deployment. Let's go tonight. Let's go tonight. Facing Cobra's question, Loya clapped his hands on the towel, then picked up a piece of fruit and nibbled it. In front of him, there are neatly arranged plates of delicious food. If anyone who does not know is here, they will probably think that this is a banquet arranged by Cobra preparing to hold a banquet. But the cooks, maids and guards who were present knew that this large table was nothing but the Navy's dinner in front of him. And, this is already the third table. Hearing Loya's words, Cobra looked hesitant and seemed to be embarrassed. Of course, it wasn't because of Loya's appetite. The Neferutali family still had some food money. Even if they didn't, the people outside would provide enough food for Loya. What makes Cobra perplexed is that if Loya just leaves, what will happen to the historical text? Knowing that people are unpredictable, Cobra would not be naive to think that only pirates would be interested in ancient weapons. In the case of Albana, Garca has arrested 3 groups of gangsters today who are preparing to steal historical texts. And these people are the once good people of Albana. Since ancient times, wealth has moved people's hearts, and so has power. For the chance to become a superior person, many people will take the risk and try to start with the historical text. Cobra's original intention was to imprison him and try and convict him later. But Loya directly seized the power and executed him in public. Troubled times must use heavy code. As a Chinese, Loyak, who has read anecdotes from ancient and modern times, can understand more than Cobra. Facing the endless stream of guys, only death and blood can extinguish the flame of greed in their hearts. Cobra is a good king, who is dedicated to the people, and belongs to Ming Kun, who is stable in the country. But it is not a hero who can rise from troubled times and conquer the world. Knowing what Cobra was worried about, Loya threw the apple into his mouth, chewed a few mouthfuls and swallowed the core together, and then he said to Cobra slowly, "Don't worry, this is Marshal Sengoku's plan. You can't believe I have to believe in the wise admiral of the Navy's famous name. The Marshal's plan has never gone wrong." Well, it does. Rasendi's death was just an accident. Yes, an accident. Chapter 363 Trends. Marshal Sengoku. Cobra hesitated for a moment, but finally had to nod in agreement. Few of the big pirates who can break through the sky on the Great Route are fools. Those trash fish pirates don't need to be mentioned, but those guys who mix well are simply monkey spirits that compete with each other. If Loya really took the historical text and shipped it back to the Navy headquarters, I'm afraid they wouldn't consider that piece to be true. Because this is too blatant, even if you are the most powerful force in the sea, what is the difference between this behavior and courting death? So they must feel that the real historical text is still hidden in Alabasta, and the piece that has been shipped is just a cover, and then the world government will arrange for a secret delivery. It can be said that this is a psychological game. And there is a high chance that the script will be played according to this script. If Loya's purpose is only to bring back the historical text, he might just follow this line of thinking. But this time, the real purpose of spreading the news of the historical text on the sea is the growing pirate group. If you don't come to chase, then I'm not busy working for nothing. Historical texts should not be missed, but such a heaven-sent opportunity to fight pirates should not be missed. So Marshal Sengoku, after careful consideration, ordered Loya to operate in two ways. While leaving the real historical text in Albana, he ordered a large number of soldiers to be stationed there, creating the illusion that he did not take it away. At the same time, he took another piece of forged historical text away from Albana and ordered his subordinates to secretly transport them to the sea. Those pirates who can get the news will definitely think that the piece that was smuggled out to sea by the Navy is real, and the piece that stays in Albana is fake. At that time, when Loya joins the generals Kizaru and Aokiji, it will be enough to crush any guy who peeps at historical texts. And with Loya's high-speed mobility, even if the steel left in Albana is lost, he can stop them before they go to sea. Can fly, is so capricious. After a pause, Cobra pulled up the chair and sat opposite Loya, and said to him in a low voice, "Marshal Sengoku's plan is indeed perfect, but he doesn't know that Robin is still alive. During the time you left Alabasta, what if that Nicole Robin betrayed? She's the devil's child." With his previous experience, Cobra was extremely jealous of Robin. Being able to unknowingly take over the command of the Ba Rock Work Club under the eyes of K Rock Doll is enough to see what a dangerous woman she is. It's not that he doesn't have self-confidence or that he can't trust the capabilities of the Navy, but he knows that Robin is not a guy who can be controlled. Once Loya leaves, the ghost knows what she'll do. Hearing Cobra's words, Roja stopped and wiped the corner of his mouth with a towel. "Don't worry about this, even if she wants to betray, she can't do it now. You don't need to know the specific process, you just need to keep your mouth shut and don't tell her that she is still alive." "Understood. You are really an invisible guy." After a moment of silence, Cobra gave his own evaluation. "Thank you for the compliment," Loya said with a smile. Taking the fate of the entire Alabasta as a bargaining chip, Loya believes that Cobra will make a choice. After all, with his current strength, such a thing as destroying a country does not need so many devious plans. Great Route, New World, Dressrosa. The long-lost silence appeared in the luxurious palace, and the air was filled with suffocating pressure, as if some ferocious beast was entrenched here. Looking at the silent Doflamingo on the throne, even his closest deputy Toripal dared not exhale at the moment. Pika died, from the explosion of the explosive rock, with no bones left. This is the most significant loss the Don Quixote family has suffered in recent years. As the top cadre of the Special Attack Force Pika Army in the family, with his death, the Pika Army was also forced to disband and split into the rest of the army. But that's just one reason for Doflamingo's silence. The other is the exposure of dynamite rocks. Those chess pieces that took the whole family to lay down for many years have been exposed in this naval inventory, and the losses cannot be described as heavy. The Tianlong people even sent CP0 agents to contact Flamenco too much, believing that his hand was stretched too long, and to suppress his transactions in the dark world, which is commonly known as knock-knocking. The entire Don Quixote family, in just a few short days, has greatly shrunk its funds and power, and it is no wonder that Doflamingo is so depressed. But now, the news that just came has shocked a group of people. The dignified naval hero, Tekken Garp, officially landed in Dressrosa, came to the site of Kibui, and is now shopping in the commercial street. Who is Garp? There are probably few people in this sea who can say they don't know him. Roger's era of great sailing was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people, and Garp, who was touted as capturing Roger with his own hands, also became famous. Coupled with his own outstanding record, he has driven One Piece into a corner several times. Who would dare to ignore it? What's more, he came this time with an obvious demonstration flavor, as evidenced by the cannons that have been erected high on the cliffs of the port. It is meaningless to talk to him or oppress people as Chihuahai. Even if the Tianlong people put pressure on the Navy through the world government, there is no reason at this moment. The former Admiral Zepha of the dignified Navy was seriously injured by the explosive rock, and his life and death are unknown. The fact that he can still sit here safely is the best proof that the world government has taken action to suppress the incident. Otherwise, based on this alone, Garp would definitely have rushed to the palace to kill him. Staying silent all the time is not an option. Brother Doflamingo tilted his head, making a coughing sound from his neck joints. Toripal. Yes, young master. Stopping any trade in the underground port these days will not allow the Navy to find more problems. Understood. Violet. I'm here, my lord. You're in charge of hosting that group of navies. Be careful, try not to get into conflict, understand? Understood. One by one, Doflamingo slowly arranged everything, and waved them away. Leaning on the large back of the throne, Doflamingo's mouth gradually pulled out an exaggerated arc. Eerie laughter echoes from the empty palace halls. Yang. Listen to the voices of all things, and you can't hear the screams of the dead. The family records are not wrong. Destiny. It turns out that everything is a joke. Leaving the palace, the Don Quixote cadres who had not yet parted saw a soldier hurried over. After noticing them, the soldier stopped and wanted to salute, but because his mouth was dry, he had to pant heavily on his knees, and it took a long time before he stood up and said to Toripal. Tight. Urgent message. Speak slowly, speak slowly. Young master is in a bad mood today, don't bother him if there is nothing too important. Waving his cane, Toripal said to the soldier. Yes. The soldier took a deep breath and looked serious. It has been confirmed that Alabasta has buried historical texts about the ancient weapon Pluto. According to the information returned by the spies, Admiral Kizaru and Aokiji are already on their way to Alabasta. Is expected to be shipped to Holy Mary Joa in a week's time. What? Important notice of this site. Please use the free app of this site. No ads, anti-piracy, fast update, member synchronization bookshelf. Please pay attention to the WeChat public account APPXSYD. Press and hold for 3 seconds to copy, to download the free reader. Chapter 364 Fake Historical Text. With the emergence of the historical texts that recorded the ancient weapon Hades, countless forces on this sea were about to move, and sailboats quietly set sail to the sea, heading towards Alabasta. Many of them understand their own weight, and compared with the group of fierce and powerful pirates, they are just a dispensable little role. But there is always a dream. What if the hell happened? And, compared with becoming One Piece, grabbing a piece of historical text should be much easier, right? Well, it must be much simpler. So with such expectations, another group of young people embarked on the road of no return. Loya found the coast of the deserted island where Dragon Scale was located. More than a dozen warships were neatly listed here. Looking around, the entire deserted island was surrounded by a large number of navies. The island is built like an iron wall. On such an inconspicuous island, well-known powerhouses gathered here, urging the soldiers to dig. Those are all powerful lieutenant generals from the Navy headquarters, and anyone who is released is a powerful existence that can trigger waves by stomping their feet. Because the mining matter is of great importance, even Huo Shaoshan, who is usually peaceful, couldn't help but look a little serious at this moment, squinting his eyes and patrolling around with weapons. Behind the group of lieutenant generals, a tall man in a yellow and white striped suit was sitting on a chair, reading the newspaper he had just bought with his legs crossed. That was a special supplement added by the Chambord newspaper. As the largest newspaper in the world, if they were able to make a special supplement, it meant that something extraordinary must have happened. Looking at the color photo of Albana still smoking gunpowder in the newspaper, the yellow monkey pouted and raised the newspaper a little higher. It's so scary, that such a thing even happened. The above detailed description of a series of events in Alabasta, from the rebellion launched by the Pakistan Rock Work Society, to the speech of Cobra, announcing that the historical text will be handed over to the world government, are clearly recorded here. In terms of the strength of the newspaper, it is quite detailed. Of course they didn't know about Zepha's serious injury. After all, in that kind of battle, a war reporter couldn't get close at all. With the appearance of this supplement, the waves of the sea became more dangerous. The news industry is like that. They don't care how much prying eyes Alabasta will get after the news is spread all over the world through newsbirds, as long as there is a gimmick to attract people to buy the newspaper. However, this incident was obviously beyond imagination. After this disguised form caused trouble to the Navy and the world government, they turned their guns and denounced the king's coming under Chiwahai. Pirates are always pirates, and so is the Shichibukai. Everyone knows that as long as Shichibukai makes a mistake, the world government will take back the title and clean it up, and overall they are still opposed to it. It's just that over the years, none of Chiwahai has been caught, so this rule has become a decoration. But this time the problem has become a big one. In order to record the historical text of ancient weapons, K. Rochdale has even deployed a daring pirate plan. Think about it. Even the countries that are members of the world government and the mighty Alabasta cannot escape bad luck, so which countries have the actions of the other Chiwahai endangered? This is a terrifying question. Holding on to this point, the news agency shouted and denounced the various arrogant behaviors of Chiwahai, and even shouted the slogan of abolishing Chiwahai. In this regard, Huang Yuan can only comment, this group of people is really a group of mad dogs, whoever catches and bites whoever. Before Drake defected from the Navy, they also followed behind to criticize the Navy, believing that the Navy was corrupt now, and they also gave examples of the crimes committed by those scumbags at sea, which made Sengoku's face crooked with anger. And now, when he scolded Chiwahai, he didn't even change his lines. Leaving aside the group of unscrupulous journalists, looking at the full-body photo of Loya below the newspaper, Kizaru smacked his lips. However, Loya-kun, you will really cause me trouble. Only when I got the news of the King of Heaven, I found the King of Hades directly there. When are you going to stab the King of the Sea? There are only 3 ancient weapons in total, and 2 of them have already been stabbed by Loya. This luck, or the ability to cause trouble, really admires Loya in this life. At this time, a soldier ran over and saluted Kizaru. Report. General Kizaru, the warship is ready and ready to go to sea at any time. Hey, got it. Really, it's been a while since I got off the ship, and I'm going to sea again. Kizaru slowly stood up and picked up the admiral's cloak on the back of the chair. I really envy Sakazuki. I don't have to do anything in the headquarters. Can't these guys be considerate of us old guys? As for Kizaru's complaint, the soldier pretended not to hear and looked at the sea without squinting. Hey, I'll go to Alabasta from here in a week, please spare me." Kizaru grumbled as he stepped onto the deck. Soon, the warship issued a loud whistle and slowly sailed away from the coast. Loya followed Mariah before, and it took him a full month to reach Alabasta along his route. And now Sengoku requires Kizaru to arrive within a week, even with the help of the Navy's secret route. This is definitely not an easy task. Tisk tisk, sure enough, the best archaeologists are also the best counterfeiters. Looking at the piece of forged historical text in front of him, Loya was amazed. In response, Robin, who had been busy all day and night, clapped the dust on his hands, tore off the dusty apron wrapped around his waist and threw it aside, and said to Loya speechlessly, "Lord Loya, since you know me, I'm an archaeologist, so don't force me to desecrate cultural relics." Quote. For Robin, historical relics are the most precious treasures in the world, which cannot be desecrated and trampled on. But people had to bow their heads under the eaves, and because this matter was of great importance, she had to build this imitation stone tablet according to Loya's request. With his keen sense of cultural relics, this imitation is enough to be real, and even Loya had to leave a mark on it quietly to distinguish it clearly. Well, you have to think like this, Robin, you're desecrating cultural relics now, and you're actually protecting the real historical text. Sometimes in order to protect something, it's okay to go into the dark, not to mention just a mere imitation. Quote. After listening to Loya's explanation, Robin didn't speak, and continued to pack up the tools in his hands. Boom! A dull sound rang out in the empty cave. Looking at Loya, who raised the tall stone tablet with one hand in surprise, Robin asked softly, "Then where are you going to transport this thing next?" "Send it back directly, Navy headquarters." "I can't tell you this." Holding the stone tablet weighing several tons with one hand, it was as easy as holding an apple. As he walked out of the cave, Loya said to Robin, "I talked to Cobra, you will be hiding in the palace for the rest of the time, and someone will pick you up in a few days." Quote. Okay, Lord Loya. Looking at the handymen who had been silenced and frozen into statues in the cave, Nicole Robin felt a chill in her heart, and she couldn't think of any resistance. Chapter 365 Polite Answer. The sun rises and sets, the clouds roll in and out, everything is proceeding in an orderly manner, and everyone is looking forward to it, waiting for the arrival of the final day. But this period of time was not idle. Countless pirates flocked here. In just a few days, the pirate guerrillas and the soldiers brought by Loya smashed a wave of records. After returning, everyone can take it to the next level. Zepha's situation is stable after the operation, but he may not be able to fight with others in his life. Now he is staying in the palace, under the care of a doctor. He is recovering. Loya went to see him once. I don't know if it was an illusion. After knowing that his body was defunct, Zepha not only did not become decadent, but became more energetic. This kind of obsession, if you let it go, if you can't let it go, you can't let it go, and no one can enlighten him. However, Loya is still very pleased with Zepha's optimism now. And one of the students who followed Zepha, Bins, the fruitful fruit, died and came back without being able to save it. A wooden plank shot out from the explosion, slammed into his chest, and the day before yesterday, he finally couldn't hold it and died of a ruptured internal organs. Ain, who was standing with him, was only blown away by the impact, making a mess, and he just died. I have to say that luck is really important. Ain did not follow Loya to solve the endless pirates in the country. She stayed by Zepha's side and took care of her teacher wholeheartedly. She had already made plans to stay by Zepha's side for the rest of the time, and she had also asked Loya if she was going to give up her rank, if Marshal Sengoku would have any opinion. Seeing her loyalty, Loya didn't try to persuade her. So now, the fighting power that Loya can show is only himself and Tony. The rest do not even have a lieutenant general of the headquarters. They get up early every day to fight the pirates, and they are very busy. Just when he was so busy that he regretted it, the good news finally came. Admiral Aokiji has arrived in Alabasta, and at the same time he is taking his subordinates and is currently deploying defense in Rape Flower Town. That's the admiral. the most powerful navy. His arrival not only gave the naval soldiers a booster, but also made the people of Alabasta feel at ease. In just half a day, it is said that thousands of people have received requests for asylum. Tisk tisk, General. Loya put down the information in his hand, waved his hand, and asked the soldiers to quickly clean up the battlefield and prepare to rush back to Rape Flower Town. The manpower is still insufficient. A pirate group with 200 million Baileys has to be shot by Lao Su himself. Loya snorted, spread his wings, and returned first. At this moment, the Rape Flower Town has become the safest place in the eyes of the common people because of the arrival of the green pheasants. Even though the Navy has explained many times, once the general starts to take action, this area is the most dangerous place, and there are still an endless stream of people rushing here. When Loya rushed back to Rape Flower Town, he encountered such a scene. There was a long line at the entrance of the town, and camels saluted, slowly leaning forward under the pull of the owner. The people with their families and their families harassed one after another, the voices of adults talking and the cries of children gathered together, forming a continuous humming sound. Just as he was about to fall, a familiar figure walked out from the entrance, and the whole scene instantly boiled. Still wearing his favorite white suit pony jacket, with a turquoise toad-eye patch on his head, Qingzi rubbed his explosive head in distress, and said to the people who looked at him with expectant eyes, that, "Be quiet, everyone, What? Hello, are you listening? Lord Aokiji, please help us." "Okay, don't worry, one by one. Master Qingzi, will you stay here? It's not safe everywhere in the country, Don't rush, everyone keep calm." Seeing the green pheasant in the crowd, Loya's mouth twitched, not knowing what to say. The dignified admiral, he couldn't even hold back this small scene. "Should I say that the folk customs of Alabasta are simple? Or are you too rude, teacher?" Secretly muttering a word, Loya fluttered his wings and quickly fell from the air. Then, quiet. Boom. The surging dragon power spread out, and the people present shivered involuntarily. Looking up at Loya, who kept flapping his wings, some people kept quiet honestly after shouting, "Lord Loya." Loya's dragon might is more terrifying than the ordinary conqueror's haki. Even if it's just a breath of air, the power is enough to stun ordinary people. In addition, the whole of Alabasta is familiar with the temper of this grown-up, and he no longer dares to make a loud noise at this moment. After getting this done, Loya slowly fell in front of Qingzi, and spread his hands. "Mr. Kuzan. You are an admiral of the Navy. Can you be more majestic?" "Ah, Lala, I was taught a lesson by the disciple." Qingzi rolled the eyes of the dead fish and glanced at Loya, and shrugged. "It's okay to face pirates, but dealing with this group of ordinary people, I'm really inexperienced. Believe in you to be a ghost." Loya laughed and did not pursue it. Then, he turned to look at the people who came to seek shelter, and shouted loudly, "Idiot! There is really a big war, and the closer we are, the easier it is to encounter danger. Where did you come from and dare to chase after you? To tell you the truth, once the war begins, I will only care about how to kill the enemy, but I don't have the spare time to protect your life and death. If you don't want to die, just hide at home and don't go out, and don't make trouble for Lao Su." Aokiji stared at Loya, who was scolding the people loudly, and couldn't help clapping his hands in admiration. "Really, amazing. Everyone understands the truth." Looking at Loya's heroic move to destroy a pirate group, they all understand that they can't get too close. But by the same token, luck also exists in everyone's heart, and everyone will not think that they will be the fish that will harm the pond fish. It is better to stay here than to be worried all day long in the face of unknown dangers. In the end, there is still a shortage of manpower. During this period of time, Loya did not open up a safe area for the people to live in. It can only be said that some places will be relatively safe. After the roar ended, looking at the trembling people in front of him, Luoya turned his head and exhorted in a slow tone, "Please rest assured, now that Lord Qingzi is here, we have enough manpower. Next, we will arrange a circle of defense. To ensure everyone's safety, King Cobra has also mobilized the major legions to protect the people, and you can also seek refuge there. Listening to the advice given by Loya, few people will be moved. If the combat power of the Kingdom Legion was as strong as that of the Navy, they would have passed by long ago. However, looking at Loya's expression, his attitude was very firm. The group of people looked around and had no choice but to turn around and leave. A group of people came, leaving a trail of smoke and dust, and then they left without a cloud. Looking at Loya's ability to deal with the problem, Qingzi walked up and patted Loya's shoulder. Not bad, Loya. I have learned to deal with ordinary people, I thought you would throw them all out. Not bad. Yes, keep it up, I guess Marshal Sengoku's hair can be saved. Luoya actually didn't want to pay attention to this guy who found himself and tested his disciples, but considering the current situation, he answered politely. Hee. Chapter 366 The Golden Monkey arrives. At night, the Navy in Rape Flower Town is temporarily stationed. Loya and Aokiji sat opposite each other, enjoying the rare tranquility. Because of the news of the arrival of the green pheasants, all the pirates disappeared today, daring not to come out. Facts have proved that the power of the general is really much more terrifying than his lieutenant general. Even if you stay here and don't go anywhere, the whole of Alabasta becomes much quieter. However, Loya also took advantage of this to steal some leisure time and drank sake with Aokiji. The marshal really rests on you. He is not afraid of problems when such an important thing is entrusted to you. After a glass of wine, Qingji also opened the chat box. But the spit that followed, listen to Loya's eyelids jumping. What do you mean by, even, to give it to me? Am I that unreliable? Luoya fiercely grabbed the shrimp under the chopsticks of Qingzi with chopsticks, put it into his mouth and chewed it hard. And this plan was originally it was I who brought it up, the marshal and his old man just modified it a little. Oh, that's right. Putting down his chopsticks, Aokiji raised his wine glass for a drink. After all, he can't find anyone here who can execute the plan. It's not that he can't understand the taller guy. Hey, did you listen to me? 5 minutes later. Kazuna's words should arrive tomorrow. Qingzi held the wine glass and finally brought the topic back. At that time his troops will need to be groomed for a day and go to sea the next day. Tonight is very windy and dark clouds cover the moon, which is not a good phenomenon, because often this means that there will be a storm. Going out to sea on a rainy day is not something most people do. Seeing that Aokiji's explosive head was swayed by the sea breeze, Loya walked over and closed the window. Recently, the sea has not been peaceful, and the Navy has repeatedly carried out large-scale mobilization, which has made many people more vigilant. Qingzi smoothed the corner of the cloak lifted by the wind and said to Loya, so this time it will really appear and are the pirates in front of me may not meet expectations. Quote. That's not bad. When it came to business, Loya finally became serious. To be honest, I didn't expect to be able to lead out guys at the level of Chiwahai or the Four Emperors. But the prosperity of pirates in the past few years is well known, so it can be solved. How much is how much? Let's see. Anyway, I have an ominous premonition that something has happened that we didn't notice. Aokiji's rare crow's mouth made him feel flustered. Maybe it was true, not sure what happened. By the way, what happened to the real historical text in Albana? Would it go wrong if we all left? You can rest assured about this. Speaking of which, an inexplicable smile appeared on the corner of Loya's mouth, and he took a sip of wine. I have taken all the necessary measures. It's just that I can't say it now. Quote. Really, it's fine if you have a plan. Aokiji glanced at Loya and didn't ask further. Speaking of which, Mr. Kuzan. After a pause, Loya said suddenly, if I really defect from the Navy in the future, will you hate me? This was mentioned in Loya's plan to tell Sengoku and others, and Loya also told Aokiji about it later. Just asking this question now, the meaning in his words is a bit elusive. After a long silence, Aokiji looked out the window and replied softly, maybe. After all, we're the same people, aren't we? The next day, the port of Rape Flower Town. Hello, General Aokiji, Lieutenant General Loya, long time no see. Looking at the soldiers who landed in line after Kizaru came down, Loya sighed. So, don't you even have a helper? Huh, Loya-kun, what did you say? Kizaru blinked and said to Loya. It's nothing. A salted fish's powerless resistance in the face of reality. Luoya reluctantly put on a smile, asked the soldiers to help carry the weapons, and then invited Kizaru. Marshal Sengoku has informed you about the plan. Right, I've got my lunch ready, let's go eat first. Ah la la, this is really good. It's really not good to eat anything at sea. Because of the rapid march, we have not enough ingredients. Now that's it, we can finally eat a warm meal. Quote. Kazuna said happily, and followed Loya to the station. The green pheasant on the side stared blankly at the two who were leaving, and said to himself, am I being ignored? After lunch, the three came to a cave that was urgently excavated. There is a 100-person team here, and they are not allowed to leave without taking shifts or evacuating. They have been waiting here every minute and every second for several days to prevent anyone from leaking the news. Seeing Loya, the soldier guarding the gate directly pointed his gun at the three of them. Don't move. Hearing the movement, dozens of people walked out of the cave within a few seconds, and the most exaggerated one even took out a cannon and aimed it outside. Kizaru, who came here for the first time, was taken aback by this battle. He stabbed Loya with his elbow uncertainly, and asked in a low voice, hey, what happened to them? Could it be a mutiny? Luoya glanced at him speechlessly, walked over with his hands raised, and then asked someone to take out the token prepared in his kabuto, and said in his hometown Chinese, after all, 3-0. I'm okay with me. Returning the token that had been checked to Loya, the soldier who had read the secret order immediately stood at attention and stomped his feet, saluting the three of them. Verification completed. Welcome to General Kizaru, General Aokiji, Lieutenant General Loya. Although I couldn't understand what they were talking about, Kizaru knew that this should be a distinguishing measure, and immediately applauded and said, it's amazing, the security measures of Roya-kun are much better than our group of people. That's because you're lazy, Qingzi complained softly and followed Loya into the cave. Lazy? Isn't that your setting? Huang Yuanwei smiled and teased Qingzi, but the other party didn't argue with him, so he pouted boringly and walked in together. Passing through the relatively wide passage, the three of them were led by the guards to verify different passwords again and again. After many twists and turns, they finally saw the goal of this trip, the imitation historical text. These soldiers are so pitiful. They don't know that the fake texts are stored here, and they work so hard. Sighing at Loya's strict layout all the way, Kizaru walked over slowly, reaching out and stroking the huge stone tablet in front of him. It's unbelievable. If I hadn't been notified in advance, I couldn't believe it was fake. Oh, so Mr. Kizaru, have you seen the real historical text? After closing the heavy iron door, Roha turned his head and asked curiously. Well, how do you say this? Kizaru smiled slyly. After all, before I joined the Navy, I wasn't a good boy. The general has seen historical texts, but in fact there is nothing to delve into. At their level, the tasks they perform are all major events that involve millions of lives and deaths. Among them, there are many opportunities for Kizaru to see the real historical text. But he said that he was not a good boy before, and the charm here is worth thinking about. Chapter 367. There are many beasts and guys. Kizaru and Akainu are recruits from the same period. They were 26 years old when they joined the Navy, and they are almost 53 now. 26 is not an easy age. At that time, it was the golden development period of a person, and what he learned during that time was enough to determine the direction of his life for decades to come. That's why the Tianlong people hated Loya so much, because he abolished the strongest genius of CP9 in the past 800 years, Rob Luki, who was in the golden age of his life. Since Kizaru joined the Navy at that time, and said that he was not a good guy before, who was he before, and why did he join the Navy? Something in this is worth looking into. However, this issue does not need to be discussed now. Don't look at Kizaru doing nothing all day, as if he doesn't care about anything, but he is actually a very shrewd person and has a lot of scheming. Recklessly asking his answer will only be perfunctory. Loya didn't want to do useless work, so he shrugged, didn't speak, and continued to introduce the two. This piece is the imitation of the historical text, you see. Loya walked to the stone tablet and gently pressed his fingernail on it, and a thumbprint appeared on it, but there was moss around it. Covered by the huge volume of the stone tablet itself, this small mark is inconspicuous. It's not surprising that Loya's strength was able to put a fingerprint on a stone, but it's well explained when placed in a historical text. Because only fake historical texts can be destroyed so easily. When the Guanyu family created the historical text, the whole country was able to find the stones that carried the truth, which were almost indestructible. Otherwise, these things will not be passed down, and they have long disappeared in the long river of time, not to mention the world government is afraid of them. Covering the fingerprints he left with moss, Loya pointed to the bottom of the stele. If something special happens tomorrow, in addition to attacking the stele to distinguish, you can also look here. In the corner behind the stele, there was a palm-sized area, like a water stain, in a hazy contrast with the surrounding colors. It looks like it's been soaked in water. Huang Yuan squatted down and touched it with his hands. It feels icy cold, but it's strange, there's no water on it. Because that's what I froze it. Loya rolled the eyes of the dead fish and said, this is crystal rock, a precious mineral underground in Alabasta. It can emit light when placed in water. The constant low temperatures, like ice cubes, are great for cooling off the heat and lowering the room temperature in the desert. I froze it a bit and it will stay that way for a month. Quote. Does it give off a chill like freezing? Got it. Aokiji and Kizaru nodded, indicating that they understood. Loya's plan is perfect, and even the worst-case scenario has been arranged. Whether it works or not, it's great to have an arrangement. Since Sengoku couldn't be there, these things can only be thought up by Loya himself. In this regard, Aokiji showed a satisfied smile on his face. This time it is foolproof, you did a good job, Loya. Just in case principles, these are all learned from teacher Zepha, but I don't have the opportunity to use them on weekdays. Loya smiled. Leaving the cave, the three of them shaved together and disappeared in place in an instant. Of course, a full set is required for the show. The location and information of the cave are extremely confidential. Even if there is a fake historical text inside, they have to pretend that they cannot be discovered by others. Back in Rape Flower Town, Yellow Monkey was about to take a break, but a soldier rushed over in a hurry and told a shocking news. Report. Emergency military situation. 4. One of the 4 emperors, there are many beasts guy, appearing 100 kilometers to the southwest. Request for support. After the soldier said these words tremblingly, his spirit relaxed and he fell to the ground with a thud. Snapped. Loya slapped his face with a slap, and said speechlessly to Aokiji, who was still in shock, Teacher, your crow's mouth has come true. Ah, it seems so. After a speechless answer, Aokiji took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and began to adjust his breathing. Kizaru next to him also rarely put away his wretched smile and patted his cheek. Many guys. What a terrible and terrible opponent. I didn't expect to lead him out. It seems that I don't want to rest now. I really don't understand, what is his reckless man coming to snatch the Hades? Who knows? That would have been a lunatic. Aokiji opened his eyes, let out a sigh of relief, and answered Kizaru's question. Let's go, it's not the first time to fight him anyway. I hope it can be resolved within a week. 1 week. Luoya was almost bit his tongue by the words of Aokiji. It will take a week for you two to shoot. How strong is he? Guy likes suicide a lot, and he has challenged the navy and the other 4 emperors many times by himself. Loya knows this, but for Guy Duo, because his defeat is too dazzling, what he knows best is Guy Duo's undead characteristics. In terms of strength alone, this is not clear. After I go back this time, I have to study the information about the 4 emperors. Luo Ya planned so in his heart. No, Luo Yusong. At this moment, Kizaru grabbed the conversation and replied one step ahead of Qingzi. Qingzi included you for a week. The strongest man in the world is Shiro. Beard, but when it comes to heads up, Guy isn't a monster at all. I'm lucky this time. With you and Aokiji, there are 2 people with freezing ability, which can limit his performance. And this is not the naval headquarters. The empty desert allows us to do our best. A week, it has been the most an optimistic estimate. Quote. Even me. Loya's eyes widened. Hey, just kidding. That's the 4 emperors. What are the 4 sovereigns? They are the top figures in this sea. Which one is not the outstanding record? Which one is not famous? Look at Shanks slashing the clouds in the sky with one sword, and you will know the strength of the other 4 emperors. And now, Aokiji actually wants to drag himself to fight Guy more. Just kidding. He admitted that the current Aokiji is not his opponent, but that is because the ability of the Ice Dragon Slayer takes priority over the Devil Fruit, not only the attribute restraint, but also the innate control advantage. But really, there is still a little gap between him and the 3 generals. You must know that the 3 current admirals of the Navy are not comparable to the admiral candidates like Tautu and Chigu, who barely reached the passing line. Even if we look at the centuries-old history of the Navy, the 3 generals in this position are definitely top-level combat power. However, it is such a group of people that they have to put all their energy into defeating the opponent, but now they want to pull themselves up. Another week. Are you sure you know what you're talking about? Luo Ya's expression revealed what he was thinking. In response, Kizaru hooked his shoulders and laughed slyly. Alas, Luo Yasong, are you afraid? Don't worry, we've played with Guy dozens of times, and we've already figured out his weakness. With me here, you'll be fine. Huh, can I trust you? Stop talking nonsense, come with me. Before Kizaru could answer, Aokiji lifted Loya's collar impatiently, pushed open the door and walked out. Chapter 368 Missing Patrol. To the southwest of Rape Flower Town is a vast uninhabited land. This area, even in the desert country of Alabasta, is an absolute forbidden place for life. Under the scorching sun, the desert rises in a scorching heat wave that makes one feel like breathing in flames. In the empty and boundless desert, a bright green suddenly appeared, but if you look closely, you will find that it is just a mirage that appeared because of the high temperature. Even the camel, known as the ship of the desert, would never set foot on this land of death. But at this moment, a group of fools broke into the desert. Grumpy. A sailor with gauze on his head removed the gauze covering the corners of his mouth and dripped the last bit of water from the jug down his throat. This was the 3rd day they were patrolling here. Even if the environment was harsh, they still kept the order in mind, did not miss any blind spot, and carried out the inspection mission seriously. Don't doubt the resilience of the pirates, it is because this place is no man's land, so it is necessary to strengthen the defense. Captain, everyone's water bottles have been drained, why don't you go back and refill them first? Putting down the water bottles, the soldier glanced at his companions who were hiding from the sun behind the stone wall, and said helplessly. It's not that they are too squeamish to endure hardship, but the temperature here is just too terrifying. There is no water supply here, and at most they have to fall down due to lack of water in one day. And once you fall, you never want to get up again. The scalding yellow sand would cook their skin in just a few minutes, causing severe burns, followed by evaporating tissue fluids until they became dry. The task they received was to inspect the desert, and so far they have done well, and it is reasonable to return. After listening to the soldier's persuasion, the Navy dressed as the captain tore off the cape that was used as a turban from his head, and when he twisted it, there was a sound of water crashing. Those are sweat, Navy capes woven from special materials, which are much easier to use than ordinary cloth. He wrapped the cloak on his head again, shook his water bottle, and the team leader laughed and scolded, "You don't listen to me asking you to save water. I still have a small half pot left here, so you're done drinking." The soldiers laughed and did not dare to answer. After a pause, the captain threw his water bottle to the talking soldier and said, "Wait a while, and then take a look at the stone wall forest over there, and then we'll go back. Everyone, spread the water evenly, and hold on for a while. Then go home and eat spicy food." Oh. Simply rectify the morale, and a group of people continued to face the sun and move towards the target point. Walking in the desert, suddenly, a soldier raised his head and put his hand on his forehead to block the dazzling sunlight. "Captain, did you hear anything?" "What sound?" The squad leader frowned, also raised his head and looked up at the sky. Tweet. Everyone heard this shrill cry, and in their sight, a black spot was rapidly descending, and it was about to hit the ground. Looking carefully at the dark shadow, the team leader suddenly widened his eyes. "That's a bird, man. No, someone is sitting on a bird. And that bird can't seem to hold on. No matter what falls from the sky, don't stay where you are anyway." Because that thing turned out to be aimed straight at them. With such a height and that huge volume, being hit is not a matter of serious injury, but the difference between mashed meat and minced meat. "Disperse. Conceal." The squad leader gave orders loudly, and a group of people hurriedly separated. Just as they ran away from the center point, something in the sky just fell. Boom. Rustle. A terrifying impact suddenly appeared, and the ground became soft like cotton, caught up by the wind pressure from behind, and a group of people suddenly fell a dog and ate shit. Then, a large amount of yellow sand was splashed high by the impact, and the whole scene flew sand and rocks, obscuring the sky and the sun and the moon. Bah! What the hell? Covering the yellow sand in front of him with his hands, the team leader tried his best to get up and look into the shadows. Then, when he saw the figure standing up slowly in the sand pit, he held his breath in horror. Hundreds of beasts. Many. Glancing at the huge strange bird that was crushed into flesh and separated from head to tail, Guy slowly moved his shoulders. "Not dead again. Can you die at 5,000 meters? Let's find a higher position next time. If the Sky Island really exists, it should be suitable there." With his movements, the earth began to tremble, and the overwhelming momentum brought by the huge size made Guy more like an ancient demon. Boom. As soon as I stepped on it, the desert was like an earthquake, and one dune after another was shattered and became extremely flat. Surrounded by empty yellow sand, Guy turned his head slowly and suddenly opened his mouth. It would be better if someone was there. Noticing Guy's many eyes, the team leader bit down on Kobo even though his feet were shaking. "Quick. Send the news back." "Yes." The soldier, who was also trembling because of the frequent appearance of Guy, gathered up his courage and took out the phone bug that was protecting him all the way. The other party is the four emperors. Whether this group of people can survive depends on Guy's mood. But before that, they had to bring back the news of Guy's extra appearance. Boom. Boom. Every step was accompanied by a terrifying vibration. Guy walked slowly to the squad leader, lowered his head and asked loudly, "Navy, where is this place?" The sound was like muffled thunder, deafening. Just the airflow emanating from the other party when he spoke gave him the illusion that he was about to be blown away. Hearing Guy's many questions, the squad leader clenched the useless musket, and shouted loudly, "This is Alabasta. There are many beasts. Guy, what are you doing here?" Although the other party is the four emperors, the attitude of the squad leader at this moment is not that weak, and the courage he shows is enough to move anyone. As if he hadn't heard the latter sentence, Guy chewed on it a lot to himself. Alabasta. The next moment. Wow, that's great. I found Alabasta. Woohoo, that's great. In the eyes of a group of Navy, Guy Duo cried out loudly like no one else. Tears shed like rain, wetting a large area of yellow sand. I actually cried. I'm afraid it wasn't a fake four emperors that I met. The Navy had this idea in their heads, and looked at each other at a loss. But immediately, Guy stopped crying and showed a hideous smile on his face. However, since it's already here, Does that mean that Christopher Loya is here too? Are you ready to die? Christopher Loya. Lieutenant General Loya. Guy is actually here to find him. The captain's eyes narrowed, and just as he was about to say something, a big hand suddenly appeared in his sight. The last word he heard was how angry Guy was roaring. The Navy. I hate the Navy the most. Go to hell. Chapter 369 The General Shot, so terrifying. Please subscribe. How long has the patrol been out of contact? In the temporary camp on the edge of the desert, the three of Loya came to the tent in the center and asked about Guy Duo's movements. The person in charge of this area is a major general named Luo Wei. Because the task of inspecting this land of death is too difficult, Luo Ya ordered the few major generals under his command to come here before. Hearing Loya's question, Major General Lo pulled away the map on the table and pointed to the central area of the desert. His voice as gentle as always. It's been half an hour, but according to the reports of the rest of our soldiers deployed in the desert, Guy many were not present in their area of responsibility. Quote. Excluding these directions to town, then the most likely position for him now is this and this. Major General Lo tapped the two big black forks on the map. So if you want to find him, it's best to go straight from the west, through the canyon in the middle of the desert, and after a circle, you can definitely find him. The words are concise and clear, the thinking is clear, the current situation can be clearly explained in a few words, and he can still be calm in the face of Guy Duo's opponent. In this regard, Huang Yuan applauds obscenely. Awesome, great job. I never imagined that there are such shrewd and capable female major generals as you in the Navy. I always thought that Tina was the only one among the young generals who could pass. It seems that our Navy is not as powerless as the outside world says. Hearing Kizaru's praise, Major General Lo's hand froze for a second, then he took a phone bug from behind and handed it to Loya, and continued to say indifferently, Lieutenant General Loya. Please bring this. If we are in another, I found a lot of guys at the location and will notify you through this phone bug. Quote. Well, I see. After picking up the phone, Loya nodded. After finishing the work, the three walked out of the tent together, preparing to track Guy Duo. But before stepping out of the tent, Major General Luo Wei said to Huang Yuan quietly, General Huang Yuan, thank you very much for your compliment. But please don't get me wrong, I don't mean to look down on women, but I am really a man. Quote. Click. In the next second, the yellow monkey petrified at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the whole person froze in place, motionless. Half an hour later, three figures were moving fast in the desert. Relying on the advantage of his ability to fly, Loya came to the high altitude to investigate the situation, and at the same time pointed out the direction for the two people on the ground. While running, he quietly approached the green pheasant, and Huang Yuan pouted and said slyly, He is so beautiful, his speech is nice, and he has pink hair, but he turned out to be a man. How can he be a man? In this regard, Qingzi glanced at him. The Halescanter family has been serving in the Navy for 3 consecutive generations, and out of the 7 there are 3 major generals. It is one of the few families in the Navy. If you pay a little attention, we'll know what kind of people the children of their generation are. Ah, what kind of people are they? Huang Yuan was stunned, and asked humbly. Nothing. Aokiji felt inexplicably tired when talking about this family belonging to his own faction. 2 sons, one named Gal, who was addicted to war and killed many prisoners without obeying orders, has been demoted to corporal and is now cleaning toilets in the headquarters. The other is Lo, talking about respecting women but being macho. Sissy. Yellow monkey. Well, what an interesting family. At this moment, Loya in the sky suddenly projected an ice spear to the ground and landed in front of the 2 of them. Aokiji and Kayabu looked up. Loya made a gesture with his left hand, and his right hand pointed to their 3 o'clock direction. The gesture was memorized by several people, and it was the gesture of finding the target. Is it over there? Qingzi tightened his collar and rolled up his cuffs. Looks like it's ready to fight. Ah, I think so too. A weird smile appeared on Kizaru's face, and suddenly he kicked out behind Aokiji. Lightspeed kick. A golden light Jinchuriki column appeared instantly, penetrated the sand dunes behind Aokiji, and kicked a large stone weighing several tons that Loya smashed into the air. As expected of many guys. Found us so far. It's not like you don't know his physical fitness. If Roha can find him in the air, then he can also find Roha. Let's go, the battle begins. After Aokiji finished speaking, he disappeared in a flash. Hey, what a boring guy. Kizaru groaned, putting his hands on his chest, and a golden light shot out immediately. 8-foot mirror. Afterwards, his body turned into a golden light and bounced between the mirrors, much faster than the green pheasant. In midair, Roha put away the magic that had been condensed, and just wanted to express his gratitude to Kizaru when he saw the two of them jumped past, moved towards Guy, and ran away after a while. Withdrawing his gaze, Loya raised his head, looked at the huge figure on the horizon again, and smacked his tongue. Some people used to say that Anti was the tallest among the 4 emperors, but now it doesn't seem to be sure. From Loya's position, even if he is far away, Guy's stature is like a giant. The large stone weighing several tons he threw over just now was as big as a house to him and others, but to Guy, it was just a toy the size of an arm. As the stone was broken, Guy also discovered Kizaru and Aokiji, and roared angrily. Green pheasant, yellow monkey, this time, I will kill you guys. Then try to see if you have made progress recently. Otherwise, I will use a laser to smear your face again. Huang Yuan teased Guy more than to be outdone. It is conceivable that Guy was defeated in the navy before. After he had it in his hands, there was definitely one of the people responsible for executing him. But the result is very obvious. Even if the yellow monkey shot, he couldn't kill many guys. Asshole. Enraged by Kizaru's words, Guy took more steps, raised his fist and slammed towards Kizaru. Obviously it is such a huge body, but Guy's speed is unexpectedly fast, and he can't see any limitation due to his size. In just a split second, the huge fist slammed heavily on the location of Kizaru. Boom. The sky is torn apart, the mountains and rivers are toppled. With just one punch, the earth was like a soft cake, and Guy opened a big hole directly. Countless sand and stones sputtered radially out of this violent punch. It's just that although Guy's speed is very fast, Kizaru is faster. As a person with the ability to shine fruit, the speed of Kizaru is the highest in the world, and there is no existence. Not ready to fight against this Guy's fist, Kizaru dodged to the top of Guy's head, and his kick with an upside-down golden hook fell ruthlessly. The firmament, light speed kick. As soon as it came up, it was a big move. In the face of the 4 emperors, even the generals could not relax their vigilance. Looking at the huge light Jinchuriki column with a diameter of more than 50 meters in the sky, Loya sneered at Kiba with empathy, and his back was aching. Back then, in the 10th battle of the prison death fight, he had survived Kizaru's move and directly beat him out of combat. If it weren't for the help of the ice-made exoskeleton, it would be a problem to say whether it could survive. Bang! As if a nuclear bomb exploded, orange-yellow flames shot into the sky, and a huge mushroom cloud appeared on the battlefield. This time, at least I have to be injured, right? Loya thought so, but immediately, he saw Qingziping raise his arms, and large ice crystals covered his hands. Aiming at the center of the mushroom cloud, the green pheasant's face was cold and roared, broken pheasant mouth. Tweet. A crisp cry resounded through the desert, and a huge ice bird with a wingspan of more than 100 meters suddenly appeared, rushing straight into the center of the mushroom cloud. Bang! Looking at the battlefield that was scorched and then frozen in an instant, Loya only felt a burst of Kiba pain. Sure enough, once the general is serious, it is so terrifying. Chapter 370 Guy's Invitation. To withstand the big attacks of Aokiji and Kyabu head-on is something that even Loya, who is completely dragonized, definitely does not want to try. Looking at the hell-like battlefield, Loya Kiba sucked on Kiba Hanako in pain. Tisk tisk, it's really amazing. After the explosion, the battlefield calmed down for a while. But at this moment, Aokiji suddenly shouted loudly, "Loya! Hurry up! Do you not leave any buffer for others? It's a little too immoral. But I like it." A smile appeared on the corner of Loya's mouth, and he bent back suddenly, accumulating strength. The scales on his arms were enlarged by the swollen muscles, and the surging magic power was poured into his right hand without reservation. Then, between heaven and earth, an inexplicable coercion burst, as if the whole world was shaking. The ice cubes left by Aokiji's attack dissipated at a speed visible to the naked eye, and then condensed in Loya's palm. Snapped. Firmly clenching the ball of light in his palm, Loya slammed his fist out at the mushroom cloud. "Dragon Slayer, profound truth. Tianyu is coming. Call out." A white light Jinchuriki column that was several times smaller than the speed of light in the sky of the yellow monkey suddenly appeared and disappeared, but the speed was not weaker than the speed of light of the yellow monkey, and only a shadow was left in the retina, which made people shake dazzled. Afterwards, the light Jinchuriki column submerged into the mushroom cloud and exploded. Rumbling. The terrifying cold directly froze the smoke and dust in the sky into ice crystals. Aokiji knew about Loya's move, but this was the first time he heard the prefix of the move, so he seemed a little surprised. "What is Dragon Slayer, profound truth? Aren't you the ice dragon of the Eudemons species? Kill the dragon. Are you trying to kill yourself?" However, the top priority is not to struggle with the small issue of the name of the move. It is because Aokiji knows Loya, so he knows that Loya's move is not about freezing, but about penetration. Immediately roared, "Idiot! I let you freeze him. Your attack is ineffective." "What?" Loya's eyes widened suddenly, and before he could answer, a big hand stretched out from the mushroom cloud, swatting away the ice crystals in front of him like chasing flies. "It hurts, hey." Although there are ice crystals hanging on his body and his hair is scorched, the three of them can see that there are many guys at the moment, and they are actually intact. Even if Loyana's Tianyu, which can shatter even sea towers, comes, it will only leave a bucket-thick Yuhi mark on his chest, just like ordinary people scratch Yuhi when they scratch their itch. And just this little Yuhi seal disappeared completely in 2 breaths. There are so many 4 emperors, guys, it's so terrifying. The defense is still as terrifying as ever. There are so many beasts and guys. Kizaru frowned and said, "If I failed to control him with the freezing of the 2 of you in the first place, it would be really difficult to fight next time." Guy is mostly a lunatic, moody, even suicidal. But he's just crazy, not stupid. Usually, Guy is at his most inattentive and weakest state when he fights for the first time. If he doesn't control him this time, he will subconsciously raise his vigilance. The Loya just now can still leave a Yuhi mark on the opponent, so in the face of so many guys who burst out in strength, I'm afraid I really won't be able to get a hair off. Hearing Kizaru's words, Loya sighed with a twitch. "So, why didn't you tell me the details before?" Regarding Loya's question, Qingzi glanced at him with an ugly face, and softly spit out 2 words. "Forget." Loya. Because Loya's strength has increased too fast, especially after he came out of the retreat, closed confinement, Aokiji and Kizaru have long regarded him as an existence at the same level as themselves. This is a good thing. Because the stronger the Loya, the stronger the force representing the navy. But compared with these veteran generals, Loya still lacks a lot of heritage. Take the information of the 4 emperors as an example, but the lieutenant general's Loya can only come into contact with slightly important information on weekdays. And for such things as Guy's many weaknesses, he is completely inaccessible. It is clear that he has the power of a general level, but his identity is lower, which caused the 3 people to fight for the first time and did not achieve the expected goal. Well, but it's not that scary. Kizaru suddenly smiled slyly. Although this time without the help of the marshal, Mr. Karp and Sakaski, this is not the naval headquarters, we can do our best, and count. There are still some hits. Quote. Loya, you and I will use the freezing effect with me later to control Guy's movements as much as possible. Aokiji's face returned to normal, and his arms and chest were covered with thick frost. The only one who wants to win Guy is the only one. The way to do this is to use up his physical strength. Kisamu has the advantage of speed and will try to involve him as much as possible, and the rest is up to us. Quote. Did he use up more stamina with each movement with the freezing control effect? I see. In this regard, Loya nodded seriously. Christopher Loya. Suddenly, Guy's loud shouts resounded through the desert, and Loya shuddered subconsciously when he heard the name. Turning his head, he rolled the dead fish's eyes and looked at Guy Duo. Why? Guy no Loya. What the hell is this? Aokiji and Kizaru, who were about to make a move, couldn't help but stop and stared at the two who were staring at each other in astonishment. Ice Dragon Fruit Ability. Guy said loudly. Don't stay in the Navy, join me. Let's build the world's strongest animal army. I can give you the title of the fourth disaster. It was rare for the madman Guy to be organized and clear. Hearing his words, Loya suddenly understood. I almost forgot, the old thief Oda always likes to design a little humor for the characters in his pen for readers to find and find fun. As for the many beasts Guy, he was designed to be an absolute animal fruit lover. Just look at the legions under him, all of them are those with animal fruit abilities. Although the three major disasters are still unclear, the Drought Jack, who is most familiar to everyone, is a top expert in the animal system. If you guess according to this theory, then, Guy is mostly interested in the ice dragon fruit he lied about. So you want to pull yourself in. It's not impossible, hey. After all, it was the top phantom beast fruit of the animal system, and it was the legendary terrifying creature standing at the top, the giant dragon. As for the four major disasters that Guy said more. Loya blinked. 4 disasters. What title are you going to give me? Hey, isn't Luo Yasong heartbroken? Kizaru waved his hand. At the same time, let's fight with Luoya and Guy more, spare me. If you keep listening, you'll know. Qingzi was quite confident, and he suddenly understood the intention of Loya's words. Hearing Loya's question, Guy directly ignored the green pheasant and the yellow monkey and said loudly, the 3 major disasters under my command are drought, flood and insect disaster. If you want to join us, natural disaster Loya or snow disaster Loya, you decide for yourself. I really thought about it. This time, it was Loya's turn to be stunned. It seemed that Guy's desire to pull himself into the team was definitely not a temporary intention, but after careful consideration. Otherwise, based on his IQ and acting style, he would never have thought of the names of natural disasters and snow disasters. Looking at the many guys waiting for him to answer, Loya raised his arms and said in a falsely distressed tone, however, compared with the general's name, your 2 titles are not very domineering. Shit. Guy immediately blew his beard and stared, glaring at Aokiji and Kayabu, and the 2 of them subconsciously assumed a defensive stance. Chapter 371 Awakening Dragon King Shikai. Continue to subscribe. What's so good about a general? No matter how high the status is, it's just a dog of the Tianlong people. Guy spat in disdain and smashed a big hole in the sand. It's better to be a pirate. You can do whatever you want. Be free. Aokiji and Kizaru's faces were ashen when they heard these remarks, but they couldn't refute them. Indeed, although the Navy is powerful, it is an institution under the world government after all. Not only does the annual military expenditure need to be provided by the world government, but even ordinary personnel transfers must be provided to the world government for filing. The rules and regulations are too complicated to ultimate, which can be said to be quite unfree. Not to mention that there is a group called Tianlong people above the world government. They do not have political rights, but they retain the kingship. So don't look at the endless emergence of various cross-era black technologies in the One Piece world, and there are collective organizations with advanced concepts such as the world government, but in the final analysis, this is still a feudal dynasty. The Tianlong people are the emperor. But Navy benefits are good. At this moment, Loya said frivolously, after retirement, I will also provide a pension package, just like my teacher's EPUB. And the food in the naval cafeteria is really delicious, and ingredients from all over the world can be delivered with a phone call. For pirates, do you have a cafeteria? Guy took a deep breath. Looking at your face, shouldn't you still eat barbecue yourself? Loya said with a frightened face. Okay, let's not mention it. What about accommodation? What about medical insurance? What about future promotions? Shouldn't it be? Will it be the same? Guy Duo's expression changed a bit, but he still didn't want to answer this question. Okay, let's change the question. Even if I don't mention these, how much can I get a year? Loya pinched his fingers and calculated. Look, I am now a lieutenant general of the headquarters, and I do nothing all year round. My salary is also 300,000 Baileys. The old man over there probably won't be able to fight for a few years. After he retires, I will take up the position of general, and it will be 2 million Baileys a year. This is still net income. Fighting the autumn wind, looting the pirates, and mixing hundreds of millions of Baileys a year is no problem. Quote. But how much can you give me? At least 1 billion Baileys to start. I know you are rich, after all, you are the 4 emperors. But how much can your subordinates get? You work hard all year round. I'm afraid it's up to 100 million. It's enough to buy the most rubbish devil fruit, or Chambord. Auction price. Quote. Bullshit. Guy finally raised Yuhi's face and retorted loudly, Jack took 300 million Baileys last year. This is what I gave him. I didn't count the treasure he robbed himself. Oh, it turned out to be only 300 million Baileys. Aokiji Kayabu and Loya spoke at the same time, looking at Guy Duo with a strange expression. Leaving aside Loa's noncompliant remarks about looting pirates, if you put it this way, being a pirate seems to be really poor. At least the beast pirates with many guys are indeed very poor. Cut, that's incredible. Loya spread his hands and said helplessly to Guy, you see, this is not what I want, but you and the Navy are not comparable at all. The food is poor, the accommodation is poor, and there is no insurance. It's also risky. Don't even think about getting ahead in your entire life, and you don't have much money to get it. Snapped. Loya slapped his hands, pointed at Guy Duo disdainfully, and announced the result. So, the person who messed with you is really in the water. Silence. The battlefield fell into absolute silence. Aokiji patted Kizaru on the shoulder and sighed. Sorry, I guessed wrong. I thought Loya was going to get the information about the 3 disasters in a cliché, but I didn't expect. Hey. No, I didn't expect it either. Kizaru replied in a daze, and suddenly looked at Loya with a fearful look. This bastard is actually thinking about his position as a general. I'm not old yet, okay. Looking at Guy's demented expression, Loya shrugged, saying that he had nothing to say to him. This is also where they fell into a misunderstanding. The world of One Piece is a world full of dreams. The Straw Hats came together because of their dreams, and compared to their comrades and dreams, even Nami could treat money like dung. Probably. Coupled with the strict hierarchy established by the children at sea, for these famous pirates, there is no uneven distribution of benefits on the pirate ship. Because their captain is the absolute authority. God of all. They just need to obey the captain's orders, and the captain does not accept any questioning and is a real word. But Loya can ignore these. As one of the modern transmigrators, he is influenced by a clear open-mindedness and self-centeredness, and he can attach great importance to these views. In addition to being powerful, the Guy pirates really can't be compared to the Navy. If his thoughts spread in the pirate circle, it might be more dangerous than Drago's thoughts. It is true that not everyone has the strength of Loya and controls absolute power. But most people with similar strengths may have to think more about it. At that time, when you look at me unhappy on a ship, I think you are not pleasing to the eye. What a happy scene it should be. As the so-called killing heart, Loya believes that as long as his words spread, many pirate groups will fall into civil strife. Because they are pirates, because they have ambitions. After continuing to be silent for a long time, Guy Duo suddenly moved. He raised his fist slowly, and suddenly smashed it at Loya. Fuck me, bastard. This attack came so suddenly, so swiftly. When Kizaru and Aokiji came back to their senses, Guy's fists had already hit Loya heavily. Loya. Boom. The dull crashing sound seemed to hit the hearts of the two of them. They looked nervously at the position where Loya was standing, and their hearts were raised. Don't look at Loya as a lieutenant general, but his freezing ability plays an important role in the outcome of the battle. If he dies, Aokiji and Kizaru can only declare GG. At this moment, Guy's complexion changed, and his thick arms suddenly trembled uncontrollably. In the thick smoke, Loya's voice sounded slowly. I have always been curious before, why are you able to hold up the name of the four emperors? I have seen Big Mom's thunder and torrential rain. I know that Yuhi's sword energy shatters the sky. I also know that Whitebeard's vibrations are enough to rip through the void. But you. Why? Call. The two wide dragon wings waved suddenly, freezing the surrounding yellow sand directly in the air. At this moment, Loya's head has become a complete dragon head, just like what he showed when he fought against Drago. But at this moment, his fingers have become more slender, and there is no human appearance at all. The leather shoes on his feet were torn, and sharp nails protruded out, firmly grasping the ground. The thick, long tail on the back of the butt swung from side to side, crackling the air. The two claws stretched out, and Loya's arm supported Guy's fist without shaking. Then he smiled. Just because of your strength. Just because of your strong defense. Just because of your so-called one-on-one invincibility. Boom. With a sudden step back, the ground was smashed by his foot, and the deep ravine ran through the desert, and I don't know where it extended. He crossed Guy's fists with both hands, and Roha exerted force on his waist. Under the hellish gaze of Aokiji and Kayabu, Guy's huge body slowly left the ground. Have you ever seen a flying elephant? Bang! As the sun went down, along with Roha's movements, Guy's huge body crossed an arc in midair, and then was slammed into the ground. A shoulder-to-shoulder overturned Guy, and Loya exuded an astonishing cold air all over his body. The two air currents spurted out of his nostrils actually caused a blizzard in the air. Quietly watching the smoke and dust in front of him, Loya's face was calm. Sorry, these are also my strengths. Awakening Dragon King Shikai. G_Cup Actress Idol's first shot A_V wins the championship. Watch online. Please pay attention to the WeChat public account. Mainblue 123, press and hold for 3 seconds to copy. Chapter 372 Fight Guy More. Is Loya strong? Yes, when he was still in the elite camp, he was able to fight in close quarters with an old-fashioned physique expert like Zepha. In the case of lack of experience and skills, relying on that terrifying brute force. However, how strong is Loya? No one can answer this question clearly. At the peak of physical training, it is true that there is no strong person in the world. However, physical art is also the most easily restricted ability. Therefore, after learning to return life, Loya gradually let go of the accumulation of physical skills, and turned to improve his magical ability. Including the Dragon King mode that he has been groping for, this ability to transform into a dragon is also a kind of magic. So what is shown in front of everyone is Loyana's increasingly exaggerated terrifying freezing and control of the power of death. But don't forget, the improvement of Loya's own magic level will lead to the improvement of the dragon's body and the dragon's power. At the same time that his magic level has reached this stage, his dragon body has reached nearly 70%. Especially after the Dragon King Shikai incarnates as a dragon man, the body of the dragon directly crossed the 80% mark and officially entered the 4th stage. The 4th stage of the dragon's body, the enormous power brought to Loya, is difficult to explain to others in words. But looking at the guy who was slammed over his shoulder and fell to the ground, this strength is enough to move. Hey, you're just kidding. Kizaru sucked in a breath, he even overturned that guy. How terrifying is Luo Yusong's strength? That's a lot of 4 emperor guys. A terrifying monster that ascends the throne of the 4 emperors with defense and power. To be able to overturn him, for Loya's strength, Kizaru couldn't help but add an S in his heart. Hearing the whisper from Kyabu, Aokiji silently let out a cold breath and shook his head. This kid told me a long time ago that as long as he completes that move, he can hang the three of us up and fight. At the time I thought it was just a joke, but now it looks like it's possible. The intelligence of the form after Loya broke through the Third Order is still a top secret in the Navy, and the specific situation is only known to the Navy bosses. At that time, Loya said that after he completed the move, he would hang the green pheasant and fight it, but no one believed it. Is this the move he was talking about? Looking at Loya, who was no longer in human form, Kizaru said in shock, "It's really scary and scary to say." That's right, but it's not right. Hearing the first half, Huang Yuan heaved a sigh of relief, but when he heard the last sentence, the whole person was stunned, and asked in a daze, "What's wrong?" The beginning of Shikai represents the beginning. Since there is a beginning, there must be a higher level. Yellow monkey. In other words, isn't the current Loya in its final form? Is the ice dragon fruit really so scary? Otherwise, should I still think about retirement? The newbies are so scary. How old are we, who are known as the strongest generals in the history of the Navy? Although overturning Guy was enough to raise his eyebrows, Loya's face at the moment was not very good-looking. The improvement of the dragon's body has indeed brought him a powerful increase, neither magic nor strength can be compared before. But at the same time, with the improvement of the dragon's body and the enhancement of the dragon's power, he can feel that some unpredictable changes are taking place in his body at this moment. And this change is irreversible. Dragon transformation of the Dragon Slayer. Loya sighed secretly in the bottom of his heart. He really knew too little about the secret of this power, and Edith couldn't communicate with it. So in this case, he was completely helpless. End the fight as soon as possible, if it can be done. Thinking of this, Loya greeted Aokiji and Kizaru, and strode into the smoke. All three will observation hockey, and the thick smoke is not enough for them to hinder the fight. Falling to the ground, Guy was still a little stunned. Although I have been defeated by the Navy too many times, I have never been thrown over the shoulder in such a face-to-face confrontation. Unspeakable shame came to my heart, followed by endless anger. Christopher Loya, I want. Oh, are you looking for me? The calm tone interrupted Guy's roar, and Loya came to him with a dazzling blue light on his fist. Ice dragons. Frost fist. Click. With a heavy punch, most of Guy's face was frozen together. Then, he coughed out a trace of blood, and the whole person flew out again. Ah la la, this baseball is quite big. Just as the smoke flew out, Qingzi teased, and spread out his hands and fingers, and the ice Jinchuriki column hit Guy Duo with precision. Ice ball. Guy, who was caught off guard, didn't have time to make a defensive action, and was frozen in place by the green pheasant. His body was covered with ice crystals, exuding a cold enough to freeze ordinary people. But even so, there is no change in Guy's body. The corners of his mouth were stained with blood, his hair was scattered, his eyes were red yuhi, and he looked crazy. You bastards, I'm going to kill you. Then I'm sorry, I don't want to die yet. So can you, please die first. Kizaru's voice fell and came to Guy Duo. Then, he clasped his hands on his chest, and a dazzling golden ball of light quickly condensed and formed on his chest. I said I was going to smear your face. Kizaru said viciously, and suddenly pushed the ball of light forward in his hand. Photon cannon. At this moment, Roha behind Guy also followed, knowing that Guy's defense was terrifying, and Roha also gave up using simple attack skills. He put his fists together, domineering and magic power quickly converged, gradually condensing into one point. Then, Six Kings Absolute Spear, Biggest Wheel, Broken Star. At this moment, the six forms of profound truth, which can destroy the target from the inside out, is much more useful than Tianyu, which can only be destroyed from the outside. The golden light Jinchuriki column and the shock wave of the Six Kings guns hit many guys at the same time, and the next moment, the earth-shattering explosion swept the audience. Rumbling. In the thick smoke, 3 figures turned into black lines, rushed out of the thick smoke, and stood in 3 directions. Loya gently spit out the turbid air in his lungs, as expected of many beasts and guys. This amazing defense and vitality is simply terrifying. Otherwise, how could he sit firmly on the throne of the 4 emperors? Kizaru spread his hands and said in a vulgar tone. Then he suddenly turned into a light, dodging an unseen attack. Loya's eyesight was amazing, so he noticed. When the yellow ape was dodged away, the air began to twist, as if something was squeezing the void, blasting the place where the yellow ape was before, splashing the yellow sand in the sky. As that, Teacher Zepha's air cannon. The vacuum cannon is formed by expelling the air with a quick punch, which is Zepha's specialty. This is not only a question of strength, but also a special skill. Because it is too cumbersome, and he does not lack long-range attack methods, Loya is not interested in learning this trick. Unexpectedly, Guy can be so crazy. Christopher Loya, it's not just strength and defense that I can become the 4th emperor. What? Loya's eyes narrowed, subconsciously wanting to retreat. Because he suddenly discovered that the voice came from behind him. But his movements were undoubtedly a little slower. The next moment, a heavy punch slammed into his back, hitting him far away like a baseball. Chapter 373 Guy's Real Power. How on earth did he do it? In mid-air, Roha flapped his wings and stopped himself. I have the dual blessings of observation hockey and vitality perception, but I didn't notice Guy's movements at all. Moreover, why did not even the early warning of the dragon's body work? After flying Loa, Guy was entangled by Kizaru and Aokiji. Seeing him fly back, Aokiji forced Guy Duo back with a violent pheasant mouth, and took time to shout to Loya, "Are you okay, Loya?" "It's okay." Not to mention his resilience under the Dragon King Shikai, light defense is the top in the world. Guy's extra punch just makes him feel stuffy, but it doesn't constitute an injury. Loya's movements are not like lying, so Aokiji breathed a sigh of relief, and then explained, "Be careful and concentrate. As long as your attention is not on him, he can blind all your perceptions in a strange way. It cannot be avoided even in a war." Quote. A4 emperors launch a sneak attack when the opponent can't be prepared. It is absolutely fatal. This is the real secret of Guy's invincibility in one-on-one. Quote. T.F. Luoya was extremely shocked, and looked at the green pheasant who was constantly attacking. Wait a minute, according to Aokiji, is Guy the #1 character, co-author, is he still an assassin? Did you make a mistake? You're distracted again. Guy's voice sounded from behind Loya again, the next moment. Boom. Loya stretched out his hands to firmly resist Guy's punches, and a trace of blood flowed from the corners of his mouth. But he was laughing because he blocked it. Dual purpose, don't you know? I won't, but I have 2 hands. Guy grinned a lot, scooped up with his left hand, and slapped Loya into the sky with a slap. Feeling the pain in the back, Roha suddenly understood why every time he talked about defeating Guy, everyone's expressions were so helpless and egg pain. Unlike themselves, Aokiji and the others only have observation hockey as a way to lock on the enemy besides their eyes. And Guy can launch a sneak attack as long as he is out of lock, even if it is only covered by a mere amount of smoke. 4 Emperor level sneak attack. Except for Loya, a guy with the same defensive power as Pervert, I am afraid that few people dare to go ahead. Because of this unknown ability, Ouchi and the others did not dare to be distracted in the slightest in every battle. Combined with Guy's undead characteristics, the duration of each battle is horribly long. Therefore, they are taboo about defeating Guy a lot, after all. That's really not a good memory. It's really exhausting. No, you have to get serious. Loya patted his face to wake himself up a little, then flapped his wings and flew back to the battlefield. Just when Loya and the others were fighting with the 4 Emperor guys, a group of weirdly dressed guys came to Albana, the capital of Alabasta. They were uniformly dressed in white suits, black ties, and white capes without any decoration. The stature of these people was high and low, but without exception, they wore a strange mask on their faces, showing no real appearance. A group of people walked along the King's Road in Albana, and finally stopped in front of the palace. "Stop, who are you?" Because of the plan, Loya left a sufficient number of soldiers in Albana to protect the historical texts, and they were also responsible for protecting the safety of Cobra and others. Seeing the soldiers blocking their route, they didn't speak, but the leader took out a phone bug from Kabuto. Or, phone bug specimens. Muleng's silent eyeballs are hard and won't vibrate even if they are held upside down. The soldiers didn't know what it was, but according to their regulations, as long as someone could come up with a golden phone bug, don't talk too much, just report it directly to the top. Now Loya and others are far away on the battlefield, but fortunately, Zepha is still recovering in Albana. "Understood, please wait a moment." A soldier put away his weapon, took the phone bug, and hurriedly ran inside. This scene was printed in the eyes of the people who passed by not far away, and they all felt a little strange. When will the Navy be mean to people? Although it is not enough to oppress the common people, the spiritual outlook displayed by the Navy after entering the station can also be described as being above the top. Compared to the weak Alabasta, they have that confidence and are proud of their naval status. In a small garden in the palace, Zepha was pointing at Tony Ramble. He has grown rapidly in the past 6 months, but his foundation is a little unstable. So Zepha was idle anyway, and by the way pointed Tony how to control his power. I have to say that the life of retired veteran cadres is really exciting. How many times did I say it? Use 7 points at a time, and leave 3 points for another move. Why don't you understand? Ain, who was cutting apples, couldn't help but smile when he heard Zepha's scolding. It's great that the teacher can cheer up. Of course, thanks also to Tony. With his airbag around, Zepha wouldn't be bored staying here. For Zepha's words, Tony's face was blue, but he didn't dare to talk back. My family's kendo is to say that you can blame me with all your strength. Shira Kendo also blames me for killing people. And Yuhi made that guy who said that a swordsman who can't cut things is a waste, and forced me to slash with all my strength. Is it my fault? However, no matter how he murmured in his heart, Tony didn't dare to shout at Zepha. In a peaceful atmosphere, Cobra pushed open the gate of the small courtyard and walked in. His face was serious, and the white cloth in his hand was covering something. Coming to Zepha, Cobra glanced at Ain and Tony, then said to him, "Mr. Zepha, I have something to talk to you about." Cobra's expression was so obvious, Ain and Tony looked at each other and got up to say goodbye. Ain went to the next room, and when Cobra left, he would return to take care of Zepha. And Tony, judging by his firm steps towards the outside of the palace, probably didn't plan to come back before he finished eating. After the two of them avoided it, Cobra lifted the white cloth, revealing the golden phone bug hidden underneath. Seeing it, Zepha's eyes narrowed. CP0. Did they say anything? Zepha pulled up the white cloth with his left hand, covered the phone bug again, and asked Cobra. This? Not really. Cobra put the specimen on the table beside him, and said with a serious face, "But at this time, I came to Albana, presumably for the historical text." Came for the historical text. The flavor of this is a little elusive. You must know that in Sengoku's plan, the real historical text is that after Loa and the others completed the goal of clearing the pirates, they were transported back to the Navy headquarters by their hands, and then sent to the Holy Land Mary Jo under the eyes of the whole world. Asia. And now, the CP of the espionage organization actually intervened, and it was the CP0 directly under the Tianlongren. That is a more mysterious department than CP9. Then Zepha has to ask, what are you going to do here? Does the world government know the news of your coming to Albana? Squinting his eyes slightly, Zepha sat up from the reclining chair, pulling the cape beside him and draping it over his shoulders. Come on, let's go meet them. Chapter 374 The Purpose of CP0. Tony held the bone coon and hurriedly walked out. If he stayed a little longer, and when Zephyr was busy with the things in his hands, he knew how long he would have to endure the nagging. So he moved very fast. If it wasn't for the fear of causing misunderstanding by the soldiers when he passed by with a razor, he would definitely rush out. It was precisely because he didn't rush over directly that Tony discovered the existence of the CP0 group when he passed by the main entrance of the palace. This group of people just stood there, and Tony could feel a heavy sense of oppression hitting him, making him a little breathless. This is not what they did intentionally, but the aura that naturally radiates when the strength reaches a certain level. Just like Mahak before, sitting there quietly and roasting meat is enough to make wild beasts in a radius of 100 miles not dare to approach. Unless it is deliberately hidden, this aura is always there. These guys are not easy. In addition to strength, what makes Tony even more strange is that there are several guys among them, and their murderous aura is very heavy. It's like being ready to do it all the time. Thinking of Cobra going in to find Zephyr, Tony narrowed his eyes slightly, the muscles on his face were covered in blood, and he quickly changed his face. Then, pretending not to care, he walked right past them. Ding! Like being blown by the wind, the scabbard of the white bone coon fluttered lightly on the hem of the man on the far left. The sound from there told Tony that there was a weapon hidden behind the opponent's white cloak. Feeling the movement on the clothes, the CP0 member hummed and turned to stare at Tony. Little devil, walk and watch. Sorry, it's my fault. Tony smirked and bowed as he stepped back. He didn't look like a murderer when he fought Jones, but more like a fighter. Humph. Go away. The tall man snorted coldly and stopped paying attention to Tony. At this moment, at the gate of the palace, Cobra led the soldiers out and made a gesture of invitation to the group of people. Afterwards, a group of people from CP0 followed Cobra and slowly walked into the palace. When crossing the palace gate, the leader suddenly glanced in the direction where Tony left. That guy looks familiar. Stepping into the palace, in the living room, Zephyr was already sitting at the conference table, waiting for the arrival of this group of people. Come in. After Cobra brought them, he sat on the main seat. It's funny that even though he is the weakest party, the other two forces present did not dare to sit on the main seat. In the white suits, the three leading men took their seats one after another after Cobra was seated, while the rest stood behind them, silently. Cough cough. So, I don't know what the CP0s are here, what's the point of doing it? Cobra wanted to be polite first, but gave up the idea under Zephyr's eyes. The idea directly chose to cut to the chase. We, of course, are here for the historical text, King Cobra. The man in the middle who spoke was tall and lean. With a pair of white gloves on his hands, they are easily put together at the moment, propping up the table against his chin. He wears a golden mask with a cute expression on his face, and from the lines on his left and right foreheads, it seems to be a bird. Hearing the other party's answer, Cobra turned his gaze to Zephyr. You asked me to get straight to the point, now the mountain is in front of you, what should I do? Feeling Cobra's gaze, Zephyr said with a serious face, everyone knows this, let's talk about it. After a pause, Zephyr threw the previous golden phone bug specimen and sneered, are you going to grab it hard? Or negotiate peacefully? Mr. Zephyr, Cobra looked at Zephyr blankly, and he was stunned. Hello, what are you going to do? The other party is CP0. A person directly under the CP of the world government's espionage organization. If they really ask us to hand it over, why can't we not hand it over? But unlike Cobra's surprise, the leading man didn't seem surprised that Zephyr would say this. The people behind him were a little bit strange, but they were all forced to retreat by his look, and they didn't dare to make trouble. Looking back at Zephyr again, he chuckled lightly and said helplessly, you're still such a bad temper, Teacher Zephyr. Teacher. Cobra looked at the opposite side blankly and then looked at Zephyr. It turns out that this person is still your disciple, right? Humph. You don't need to call me teacher, because our relationship has long since been cut off. Zephyr snorted coldly and said with a bad face. The hall fell silent, and after a while, the man finally spoke. It is you who taught us to do what we think is right, and I have always followed your teachings. But why are you still so angry? That's because you did something wrong. Zephyr suddenly slapped the table in front of him and stood up angrily. What you do is annoying. Your ridiculous justice can't save the world. Only peace is what the world needs. Facing Zephyr's roar, the man stood up without fear. The two sides confronted each other, and the atmosphere in the hall suddenly became tense. Well, if there's anything you need to sit down and talk about, there's no need to get angry. Cobra wiped cold sweat and smoothed the field. Zephyr was injured and couldn't do it now, otherwise he would if something goes wrong. That monster lieutenant will definitely destroy Alabasta. It seems that considering that this is someone else's land, the two of them stalemate for a while, and then sit back together again. After a pause, Zephyr folded his arms on his chest, and the old god said, no matter what, without the orders of the 5 old stars, no one can take away the historical text. Excessive authority or violation of regulations, you have to think carefully about it yourself. Quote. Hearing this, the man's eyes under the mask turned gloomy and he said word by word, even if this is an order from the Antonio family. Antonio. Cobra gasped abruptly. This name is unfamiliar to most people in this world. Even in the Navy, only a few people have heard of it. But for him, one of the 20 royal families who once created the world government, the family has always had records about this family. That is the most powerful family among the Tianlong people. Whether it is power, financial resources, rights or strength, it is the most top-notch in this world, and there is no existence. And it is such a group of people who actually issued an order to ask CP0 to bring back the historical text. Cobra couldn't help but wonder, why on earth did they do this? The piece of historical text in his own country only recorded clues to Hades, not the real Hades. Is it necessary to make such a move and let CP0 come to trouble the Navy? Hearing the chill in the other party's tone, the expression on Zephyr's face also became cold. The tiger was late, and Yu Wei was still there. The aura of the Admiral Black Arm Zephyr, who belonged to the Megacy back then, spread unreservedly, and the people present felt as if they were stuck in a quagmire, and even breathing became very difficult. Are you threatening me? Zephyr's eyes flickered with a fierce light, and the cracked mouth was like the bloody mouth of a fierce beast, with a lingering killing intent. Done. Cobra sighed inwardly, mourning his troubled kingship. Being provoked by such a name, even ordinary people will fight, not to mention the arrogant CP0. A war is inevitable, and his country is already at stake. Important notice of this site. Please use the free app of this site. No ads, anti-piracy, fast update, member synchronization bookshelf. Please pay attention to the WeChat public account Gurgurgurungshin. Press and hold for 3 seconds to copy, to download the free reader. Chapter 375 Force Back. Cobra has no doubt that what Loya had warned him about would become a reality. From what he did in front of him after he arrived in Alabasta, Cobra knew that it was a daring lunatic. Once Zephyr has an accident, there is nothing to say. Loya will not listen to his own defense. Just when Cobra felt a chill, the door of the conference hall was suddenly pushed open, and 2 figures walked in arrogantly. Leaving behind was Tony, who had recovered his appearance. He took a half step back and stood still, leaving the stage for the man in front. Looking at the figure standing upright in front, and recalling the information that he had read countless times, the man suddenly widened his eyes. Christopher Loya, how could you be here? That's right. It was Loya who appeared in front of them. The navy cloak with the unique dragon scale pattern is windless and automatic. Wearing a light blue suit, Loya stood with his chest folded, and raised his eyebrows. Listening to what you said, it seems that you have calculated that I am not in Albana. That's why you dare to force the palace, right? Bullying the soft and afraid of the hard, do your best to use the tricks. Bah. Loya spat on the ground unceremoniously, and looked at the group of CP0 disdainfully. Dare to threaten my teacher. You're tired of living, right? Boy, you. Shut up, Zulkin. The big man who had been rubbed by Tony with the scabbard before opened his mouth, but was kicked back by the leader. But not to be outdone, he looked at Loya, frowning tightly. The middle-aged man knew that this time things were a little tricky. The situation has changed, and I am afraid it will not meet the expected plan. However, do you know who you are talking nonsense to? Lieutenant General Loya, the middle-aged man said slowly. We are CP0s, interfering with our mission, but we will go to court-martial. Then just kill you all. Loya smiled slightly, and the ice-cold magic began to spread uncontrollably. Anyway, there have been a lot of Alabasta pirates in the past 2 days. They can do it. Even if there are suspicions above and there is no evidence, did they dare to attack a lieutenant general of the headquarters? Just like the mission that Loya had to perform a long time ago, after getting the position of lieutenant general of the headquarters, no matter what the forces are, you must take into account the influence of the Navy. It's good that the world government is the master, but they are just a union after all. What kind of prestige can a world government like this be able to do with the important core personnel of its own subordinate institutions just by guesswork? At that time, the alliance countries will inevitably give birth to two hearts. If the pirates are cheap, it will affect their domination of the world. The problem is really big. Hearing Loya's words, the middle-aged man slapped the desk and completely scrapped the torn desk. Bastard! How dare you! Ha, ha ha! Facing the very imposing CP0, Loya laughed loudly. Suddenly, an ice blade was condensed in his hand, and his expression immediately became gloomy. It seems that you still misunderstand me. I have killed all the Tianlong people, do you dare to kill their group of dogs? Gollum. Not only Cobra, the other CP0 members and Tony swallowed tacitly at the same time. It seems. Heard some great news. Will he be killed and silenced? Others don't know, but the middle-aged man does know about it. Even if it is a member of the abandoned Athos family, the 3 words of Tianlongren alone may be enough to make any force in the world fear. And this guy in front of him is really a killer. He even said that the task of cleaning up the remnants of Athos was performed by him himself. So facing Loyana's very arrogant question, the middle-aged man knew the answer very well. He really dared to do that. For a time, the entire hall fell into absolute silence, and everyone didn't dare to take a breath, for fear of disturbing the middle-aged man's thinking. Zephyr was silent when Loya arrived. At this moment, he suddenly said, either bring the orders of the 5 old stars, and we will hand over the historical text to you. Or, get out of here, don't force us to do it. Speaking of this, Zephyr smiled. Once we kill you, the Antonio family will definitely hold a grudge against the Navy, and when the 5 old stars are involved, the turmoil that will be caused will definitely not be small. Didn't you say peace is the most important thing? Then you should have a clear idea of what to choose now. The middle-aged man's face hidden under the mask couldn't see the expression clearly, but from the fists he kept clenching and letting go, it could be seen that he was in extreme struggle at the moment. After a long silence, he suddenly released his hand and raised his head to look straight at Loya. This time, I remember. It's all right, you'll remember it better next time. Loya waved his hand and stepped out of the way. Humph, let's go. After he finished speaking, he walked straight out, and the rest of the CP0 members behind him followed him without hesitation. And in places they didn't notice, Tony touched his ears and listened. After a long time, he nodded to Loya inaudibly, and then sat down on the ground. Scared me. I thought I was going to fight CP0. Tony patted his chest, gasping for breath. Zephyr also let out his momentum all at once, slumped on the chair and coughed constantly, and it took a long time for him to breathe. Cobra stared blankly at the few people, not understanding what happened to them. The camera returns to the hinterland of the desert, and the battle at this moment is still in the midst of anxiety. Frost and golden light Jinchuriki column are constantly flickering, and the desert through Yuhi is shattered. The ice dragons roar. The dragon head appeared behind Loya again, and a terrifying ice tornado spurted straight out, shrouding Guy in it. Click. Crack clap. The large piece of ice spread rapidly, and soon more than half of Guy's body was frozen. Then Aokiji opened his hands, and a thick ice spear condensed and formed in an instant. 2 thorn spears. Bang. Kizaru's lightspeed kick was still so fast, Aokiji had just condensed the ice spear, and his attack had already landed on Guy Duo. Then, Aokiji's ice spear ripped apart the air and slammed into Guy Duo with an unpleasant whistling sound. Boom, boom. Continuous use of the big move, even the general needs a little time to slow down. After launching the attack, the two quickly dispersed, watching Guy Duo vigilantly, and silently adjusting their breathing. Now, it's time for Loya to appear. Seeing Aokiji and Kayaburu pushing away, he put away the dragon head, flapped his wings, and rammed straight into Guy Duo. Click. Obviously suffered such a heavy attack, but Guy couldn't see a single scar on his body at the moment. He instigated armament hockey all over his body, and his 2 huge palms blocked Loya's blue and black fists, wrestling again. Both of them are powerful and defensive, and because of their wings, no one can say that either of them will suffer because of their size. This time and again, the collisions made the air crackle, and the air explosion-like smoke rings continued to appear on the battlefield, blowing the yellow sand around them high. After another fight, Guy threw his shoulders a little more and slammed his arms down on Loya by taking advantage of his size. If it is smashed this time, even the iron block will be smashed into a discus. But Guy's many actions allowed Loya to seize the opportunity, and he firmly grasped the little time he needed to swing his arms. He spread out the magic power, lifted the surrounding ice cubes, and wrapped it towards Guy Duo in all directions. Ice Fall's funeral. G_Cup actress Idol's first shot A_V wins the championship. Watch online. Please pay attention to the WeChat public account. Mainblue 123, press and hold for 3 seconds to copy. Chapter 376 with full force. This trick doesn't work for me. Guy shouted loudly and smashed the ice puck rolled up around him. But because of this blocking, Loya had already disappeared in place. When he reappeared, he had already come to Guy Duo's side. I know. Boom. Stepping on the ground hard, Loya spit out the name of magic softly. Ice carpet. The originally transparent ice cubes continued to solidify at a speed visible to the naked eye after Roha activated his magic. Moreover, the surface of these ice cubes became extremely smooth, and grains of yellow sand hit the slope, and before being frozen, they kept rolling on it. Unprepared, Guy slipped and leaned back. Taking this opportunity, Loya clasped his fists with both hands and slammed it down on Guy's chest. Bang! The ice as hard as iron shattered instantly under the tremendous force of the two of them. Guy fell in response, and then a large bowl-shaped pit appeared on the ground, with endless cobweb-shaped cracks all over it. The diameter even exceeds hundreds of meters. But even so, Guy is still not injured. Lying at the bottom of the pit, he grinned, and turned his elbow at Loya, who was chasing down from his chest. Loya, on the other hand, faced Guy Duo without any fear, and hit him with a flying knee. Snapped. The earth began to tremble again because of the fight between the two, and cracks like tortoise shells were scattered everywhere, decorating the battlefield like hell. After this war is over, no matter what the outcome is, this desert will only exist in people's memory forever. Because after their battle, what reappeared in situ was a rocky belt with karst landforms. The billowing yellow sand could not be preserved in this kind of battlefield. The aftermath of the battle between the two of them directly lifted the thick layer of sand, revealing several thousand eternal rocks buried underneath. Looking at the pit that was getting bigger and bigger, Aokiji and Kizaru twitched at the corners of their mouths, not knowing what to say. In other words, is this really the movement of two people fighting with physical skills? Why do you feel that neither of us is as exaggerated as you are? If you continue to smash it like this, won't you smash the underground river out? If there's something like that underground in this forbidden area of life. It still seems possible. Ah la la, I really didn't expect that Luo Yasong is so strong now. Because Luo Ya's outbreak stabilized the battle situation, Kizaru had a relaxed smile on his face. He is only a lieutenant general, I can't wait to see what happens when he becomes a general. If you are willing to give up the position of general to retire, you can see it soon. However, it is not pressing. Aokiji calmly gave his judgment. They are both in a kind of situation now. Balanced state. Guy's fists can seriously injure Loya, but the speed is much slower than him, so it is difficult to work. And Loya can't break Guy's defense, and can only be prevented by strength and speed attacked himself. Quote. Now let's see who of the two can't hold on, and then exhausted. Just talking about this, Loya suddenly shouted loudly, Mr. Kuzan. Help me block it. Kizaru. Kuzan. It looks like you must see a doctor. Listening to Kizaru's wretched ridicule, the green pheasant, who rarely has a red face with Yuhi, raised Yuhi's face in a rare moment, and whispered, shut up. Then dodged and joined the battle, blocking Gai Duo's attack with his violent pheasant mouth. Kizaru shrugged, and it also turned into a golden light, slamming into Gai Duo's chest fiercely. With the short burst of Kizaru and Aokiji, Roha escaped from the battlefield with a backflip, and the dragon scales on his body fluctuated, disappearing and appearing from time to time. Bang! The next moment, the dragon scales all over his body broke open, revealing Loya's original appearance. The huge gap of instant loss of strength made Loya stumble slightly and almost fell to the ground. Breathing heavily, Loya shook his head, staring vigilantly at Gai Duo who was fighting with the two generals. A wry smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. This bone is too hard. Roha knows how terrifying the recovery speed of his magic power is. Even after Shikai, the Dragon King, the magic power flows like a flood, and the huge amount of magic power and recovery speed can support him to fight for more than a week. I thought that even if the battle was fierce and could not last that long, at least 2 or 3 days could be persevered. But I didn't expect that just 1 day later, my magic power would come to an end in the fierce battle. On the other hand, there are so many guys that he didn't even take a breath. What a powerful resilience this is. There are many 4 Emperor guys, and it really lives up to its reputation. After gasping for breath, Loya's eyes narrowed and he came to Kuzan's side with Xiao. Qingzi knew that Roha's strength would be greatly reduced without dragon scales, and when he saw his arrival, he immediately shouted anxiously, "What are you doing here? Hurry back. Calm down, I'm just looking for something on the fringe." Loya comforted Qingzi softly, then stretched out his hand and broke off an ice spear beside Qingzi. Looking at the green pheasant with a black question mark face, Loya opened his mouth and was about to say something, but the unpleasant whistling sound was rapidly amplified, and he was close to him in an instant. "You're distracted again, Loya." Boom. Following Guy's words, Loya was hit by his punch, vomited a pool of blood in the air and turned into a shooting star. Loya. Aokiji Yuhi, with red eyes, slapped Gai Duo with a backhand and shouted, "Ice Age." Crack clap. The terrifying cold suddenly broke out, and in just an instant, Gai Duo's whole body was frozen. This move was so ferocious that Kizaru, who was about to attack Gai Duo, almost collided directly. Fortunately, he was fast enough to avoid the danger of being frozen. Angry green pheasant, so scary, Huang Yuan said with a pouting mouth, and then continued to condense a terrifying cannon full of light elements in the palm of his hand. Although the Ice Age move is terrifying, it is of no use to Gai Duo. When he gets out of trouble, he can buy a little time with his own cannon. As for what time to buy? Of course it's time for Loya to recover. Kizaru clearly knows what kind of body that seemingly normal Guy has, and it is not an exaggeration to say that he is a monster. Guy's extra punch may have seriously injured him, but it definitely won't kill him. Bang! Sure enough, Guy broke free from the ice very quickly, and raised his palm to slap the green pheasant on the head. But at this moment, a light Jinchuriki column with a diameter of more than 1 meter hit him in the face, causing his head to tilt back involuntarily, and the attack stopped. Annoying bugs. Guy patted the dust off his face and stared at Kizaru angrily. This was a God-given opportunity to kill Loya, but it was interrupted again and again, and Guy's anger at the moment can be imagined. Although countless navies died in his hands, he had never won a head-on challenge to the Navy. He enjoys wars, but he doesn't like losing wars. The appearance of Loya not only shocked the Navy, but also made all the forces opposed to the Navy on the sea nervous, and secretly put him on the kill list. Especially his bounty in the Dark World has even exceeded 1 billion Bailey. A staggering 1.3 billion. Apart from Carp and Sengoku, this is the only existence in the Navy that has reached the 1 billion mark. A 26-year-old terrifying character standing at such a level, the Admiral is his inevitable achievement. Once he is allowed to grow up, the name of the strongest Navy may be taken away by him. Since they can't win over, Guy has a lot of murderous intentions towards Loya. But now that his thoughts have been seen through, Aokiji and Kizaru joined forces to block the way, which undoubtedly made him angry. It looks like it's impossible to be serious. Guy stood with more fists, his expression suddenly calmed down. If Loya is still here, I am afraid that Guy will be scared and stick out his tongue. You haven't been serious about the intense battle just now. I am afraid many people will not believe this, but it definitely does not include Aokiji and Kyabu. Having seen the shocking power of Guy Duo after the explosion, and seeing Guy Duo's performance like this once again, both of them raised 12 points of vigilance. Coming soon. Guy's second phase. NLT. Chapter 377. It's up to you, Loya. I don't know how long it took to fly, and the dizzy Loya slammed into a weathered rock heavily, and the whole person was embedded on it. The pain around the body was excruciatingly painful, but Roha still held back the screams, and put the ice spear to his mouth with energy. Click. The crisp chewing sound echoed in the desert at midnight, eerie. While nibbling on the ice spear, Loya looked fiercely at the direction where Guy Duo and the two generals were fighting. Hold the grass. I really tried my best to eat one bite. You wait for Lao Su, and I'll come to clean you up right now. The ice cubes entered the stomach, and under the transformation of the dragon's body, they quickly turned into surging magic power. Loya launched the return of life, and pieced together the displaced bones bit by bit. The bones of his whole body made a crackling sound, and at a certain moment they suddenly joined together. Boom! The boulder exploded, and Loya, who was redragonized, clenched his fists, felt the majestic magic in his body, and smiled. Eat it and the power will come up. This second line is really not a false rumor. It is also that Loya has a bit of a mental cleanliness, so many ice cubes scattered on the battlefield are actually edible. But in that case, it was difficult for Loya to force himself to eat the dusty ice cubes. Unexpectedly, going to pick up a green pheasant's ice spear, it ended up with a serious injury. After the magic power is exhausted, let's just eat the ice cubes on the battlefield. Roha thought so. Just as he was about to flap his wings and fly back to the battlefield, a figure suddenly enlarged in his sight. The black and thick explosive head is so conspicuous that it is difficult to make people not pay attention. Loya blinked, looking at the flying figure with a dazed expression. That's Teacher Kuzan. Bang! Smashed heavily on the ground, the green pheasant spit out a mouthful of blood, and the breath was wilted. Just when Loya was about to go over to see the situation, another figure flew over. Then, bang! Kizaru is much worse than Aokiji, his physique is not as good as Aokiji, and he has a conflict with Zephyr for this. The same attack fell on Qingzi, which made Qingzi unable to get up for a long time, and put it on him, which made him doubt his life. Looking at the sunken part of his chest, Loya knew that Kyabu had at least 3 broken ribs. What the hell is going on? Mr. Kuzan, General Kizaru. Be careful. Hearing the movement, Aokiji barely opened his eyes and shouted loudly. Coming to this world, he has already experienced hundreds of battles, big and small, and Loya is no longer the otaku who struggled to catch a wild boar back then. After seeing the tragic situation of Qingzi and the two, he has fully let go of his domineering and perception, and constantly monitors the surrounding situation. When Aokiji shouted, although there was still no change in the two perceptions, Loya's sixth sense told him that danger was approaching. This is not the danger warning of the dragon's body, but a keen sense of smell developed after many battles. Without thinking about it, Loya smashed the desert under his feet with one foot and disappeared in place in an instant. The moment he left, a pitch-black fist slammed heavily on the sand dune, and only a bang was heard, and an uncountable amount of yellow sand gushed up, and the sand waves were enough to smash an ordinary small village. All submerged below. The green pheasant and the yellow monkey couldn't dodge, and were directly buried by the yellow sand. Dodging the dangerous attack, Luoya looked at the figure of Yuhi in the smoke in disbelief, and muttered to himself, "Is that Guy?" There was a thick layer of ominous smoke all over his body, and Guy's whole body was hidden under this layer of smoke. But the thick smoke didn't enhance his concealment, because in the darkness, Guy's extra pair of eyes emitting bloody Yuhi light was so obvious. Especially the scale tattoo on his left arm, like a living animal, disappears with Guy's more breathing. That appearance is somewhat similar to the spiral pattern on his body. Loya thought so strangely. Seemingly surprised that he missed his attack, Guy put down his fist and looked up at Loya. "Christopher Loya, you're not dead. If you were killed so easily, doesn't that mean that you were weak, who fought me before?" Loya was stunned for a moment, and then counterattacked with words. But that was before. Guy exhaled 2 hot breaths from his nostrils, and the thick smoke around him instantly became more lush. If it was possible to see Guy's figure through the smoke before, then now, just a cloud of smoke. Now, game over. As soon as the words fell, Guy appeared in front of Loya in an instant. Without going for a sneak attack, Guy Duo, who was out of the lock, blatantly met Loya head-on and slammed it down. The thick smoke around him was driven by this punch, like a pitch-black Jinchuriki column. Die. This punch came so fast, it seemed to span time and space. He had just seen Guy raise his arm more, but the next moment his fist came to Loya. This is gunpowder. Loya moved his nose, thinking strangely. Next moment. Boom. Like an earthquake, the terrifying tremors continued to move along the desert. The earth was completely torn apart by this punch, and the exposed ravines were bottomless. No, maybe that is no longer a ravine, but a real canyon. The prestige of the 4 emperors can be seen in Amadara. Feeling the feedback from his fist, Guy frowned and turned to look far away. Unexpectedly, did you escape? Leaning on a large rock, Loya stroked his chest with lingering fears. It was so exciting just now. Guy's more fists have been attached to his cheeks. If it slows down for a moment, which is commonly known as 0.36 seconds, then he should be lying at the bottom of the canyon now. Fortunately, when he found out that there were more Guys, he was more careful, using an ice mirror to reflect light around him, and the dim moonlight, which blinded Guy's perception. Guy's extra punch is actually a crooked punch. If he really hits, Loya has no doubt that he will follow in the footsteps of Aokiji and Kyabu. After his dragon transformation, his defense is indeed ridiculously strong, but this defense has an upper limit after all. Although I don't know what happened to Guy Duo, it is obvious that it is not something I can resist. Thinking of this, Luoya, who was relieved, shouted to the green pheasant who stuck his head out of the yellow sand, "This kind of monster, how did you win before?" Thinking about the original records, the terrifying Guy Duo actually lost 18 consecutive defeats at the hands of the Navy and the 4 emperors. Loya couldn't help but wonder, how did you do it? Even if he had contact with Yuhifa, who had shown his strength, there must be no way to face Guy in this state, right? Bah, bah, Kiba spat out the yellow sand in his mouth, and Kiba rubbed his shoulders in pain, and replied, "In the past, Guy came to provoke the Navy more often, and facing him in this state, all the Mr. Carp stepped in to contain his attack, and we were there." Now, Qingzi suddenly stopped and showed a big smile at Loya. I'm afraid it's up to you, Loya. Loya. I have a MMP, I have to say it now. Chapter 378. I have a bold idea. Guy is more of a taciturn person and has an uncertain personality, which makes it difficult for people to figure it out. Now that the war has come, the one time he talks the most is when he wooed Loya, and after that, there are short-spoken words like, "Dead, asshole, I'm going to kill you." Therefore, Guy Duo has never called out his skill name as soon as he shot, like those people in the original book, which makes Loya still unclear what kind of state Guy Duo is in. But fortunately, there were Aokiji and Kayabu beside him. They struggled out of the sand pile in embarrassment and looked at Loya, who was waiting for him. Aokiji came to him and said, "Don't worry, there are many guys. This form can only last for a day at most, after which he cannot enter it a second time until he is exhausted." Quote. It sounds optimistic, because compared to Aokiji's previous estimate of a week or more of total combat time, a day is nothing but drizzle. But I can't stop a punch even after I become a dragon. It's still a day. Are you going to kill me? Luo Ya's eyes widened, looking at the green pheasant in disbelief. Kizaru just came over and heard Loya's complaints, rubbed his chest and smiled bitterly. "No way, after all, we can't compare to you in close combat. Just look at my current tragic situation, come on a few more times. Next time, we're going to lose our lives." This is reasonable and reasonable. The three admirals of the Navy are all those with natural fruit ability. Even if Aokiji and Akainu don't abandon physical skills like Kayabu, they should talk about pure melee hand-to-hand combat. The current stage in the Navy seems to be that's why Garp can fight with the dragonized Loya. Now that Garp is away, Loya naturally has to take on the heavy responsibility of containing Guy. However, Loya is very clear that even if he really hits the spot and does not come back, he may not be able to stop Guy in this state for one more day. Things are getting a little trickier. Now you all know that Guy's speed is so high, if I really want to go, the probability of being killed is more than 99%. Loya shook his head and asked the two of them, "There is no better way, is it? For example, General Kizaru, you used your speed advantage to contain him, or Mr. Kuzan, you trapped him with an ice wall." "It's useless." Qingzi shook his head. As far as Loya could think of it, they had also thought of it when they fought with Guy a lot before. The reason why Karp shot in the end was of course because none of these methods would work. "Since that's the case, why don't we retreat for the time being?" Kisamu suddenly said slyly. "Guy's entry into the second stage so early is beyond our expectations. Anyway, he can't catch up, so we simply retreat and wait for him to finish. At this stage, maybe let Marshal Sengoku transfer the support and talk about it." Quote. Hearing this, Aokiji and Loya couldn't help but hesitate. Indeed, if they want to leave, with Loya, they can definitely leave. However, Guy at that time will definitely fall into absolute madness. At that time, the entire Alabasta will be the target of Guy's venting. It is not difficult for the four emperors to destroy a country by one person. Loya is not a bad person. Compared with the life and death of ordinary people, he will naturally choose himself. But Zepha and the historical text were still here, and he couldn't leave them alone. And even if they avoided temporarily, the ghost knows when the support will arrive. A desert was smashed in just one day, and by the time the support arrived, Guy might have already hit Albana. Aokiji's focus was different from Loya's. He shook his head and rejected Kizaru's plan. Although this is a no man's land, there are several important populous cities just outside the desert. There will be rivers of blood. We are the Navy, allowing pirates to slaughter civilians is against our name of justice. That's no way. Huang Yuan clapped his hands, expressing his helplessness. However, blood in a river, living beings in charcoal, corpse mukuro everywhere. Luoya said 3 idioms in a row, and his eyes suddenly lit up. "I have a way to try." "Oh, what's the way?" Aokiji and Kizaru turned their heads curiously. Loya's consistent performance proved that he was a guy who was good at creating miracles. Although I don't know what trump card this guy is hiding, since he dares to bring it up at this moment, it must be very difficult. In this regard, Loya laughed, and a distorted green light floated in his palm. General Yellow Monkey, have you forgotten, have you met Haku? Silence, the Murloc Haku of the army. Kizaru touched his chin and thought for 2 seconds, then suddenly looked at Loya with a look of horror. Don't you think so? Hey, he is the existence of Haku's level, and after obtaining the freezing ability, he made himself careless. If you put this ability on Guy Duo, you probably think that we will die bad enough. Qingzi also understood what Loya meant, shook his head and said in denial, I can't strengthen Guy's strength anymore. His vitality is very huge. Before it is consumed to death, it will definitely be us. I know, of course I know this. Loya smiled, but it was because of the existence of Drago before, so I marked them in a different way. But this trick has been developed from the very beginning to the present. The purpose of coming out is just to consume the vitality of the enemy. Quote. The most orthodox enemy of living creatures can't give Guy the freezing ability that you worry about. Hearing this, Aokiji and Kizaru also lit up. In this case, it seems to be a bit tricky. I don't know if it was because of self-confidence or something, but Guy just stood there silently while the three were discussing countermeasures. The billowing smoke from his body rose into the sky, and with his huge size, he was like a demon. Seeing the three of Loya get up, Guy's many laughter came from the thick smoke. It looks like you have a plan. Come on then. Either kill me, or be killed by me. Boom. As soon as the voice fell, in the black smoke, Guy's figure instantly disappeared in place. It wasn't a shave, it was a way of moving that the three of them couldn't understand. Observation hockey was completely useless at this moment, and the three of them were back to back, vigilantly watching their surroundings. After that, Guy appeared in many forms, and he came to Aokiji. The freezing ability is still very restrictive to him, of course Guy wouldn't let Aokiji shoot at will. In the face of Guy's many punches, Aokiji didn't see the attack at all, so he subconsciously released his prepared skills. Broken pheasant mouth. Tweet. Bang. It was almost zero distance, and the mouth of the pheasant was just detached from the arm of the green pheasant, and it was smashed by Guy with one more punch. Then his fists were cast unabated and continued to advance towards Aokiji. However, with this occlusion, the other two have already reacted. The whole body of Kizaru turned into light particles, erratic like a ghost, and the speed was as fast as ultimate. He turned around and raised his hands, and the condensed photon cannon mercilessly covered Guy's big face. Rumbling. The violent explosion resounded through the desert for a long time. Chapter 379 How many chances to kill Guy? It stands to reason that when using this powerful trick, Kizaru should first make sure that he will not accidentally hurt his allies. But now Aokiji was in front of Guy Duo, and he still did that. It is conceivable that even Qingzi, who is also a general, will be seriously injured by the aftermath of this move. But, in order to buy time, no matter who the two are, they will make the same judgment. Guy is often bombarded in the face by cannons, and even if his defense is strong, he still can't stop falling back. But at this moment, Roha fluttered his wings and suddenly stuck to Guy's chest. The oil-green light group was held in the palm of his hand, and Roha slapped Guy Duo's chest with a terrifying magic power. Bang! Bang! Just after finishing the action, Loya was slapped by Guy with an extra slap. Although he didn't know what the other party was doing, Guy Duo suddenly had an ominous feeling in his heart. But because Kyabu is still increasing the output of the photon cannon, he can't see Roha's movements clearly, and he can only react when Roha touches his body. Boom! Smashing the desert into a pit again, Loya coughed up blood and got up, showing a more smug expression at Guy. The response is very fast. Unfortunately, it is still a step behind. Seeing that Loya succeeded, Kizaru stopped the attack decisively, picked up the injured Aokiji, and disappeared directly in place. Next, it's time to witness the results. Just as Kizaru said, Guy stopped all movements in an instant after being punched in the chest by Loya. The smoke on him seemed to be running out of firewood, thick and thin. After several struggles, it suddenly dissipated in an instant. Looking at Guy's appearance at the moment, Kizaru sucked in a sigh of relief, and said to Loya in shock, "What did you put into him?" "Some dead stuff." Loya smiled, licking her dry lips. It was Guy Duo who still appeared in front of them, but at this moment, thick blue sarcomas continued to spread on his chest, and the tallest one had already climbed up Guy Duo's face. At the position of his chest and heart, a bulging mass of meat rose and fell with his heartbeat, combined with the surrounding sarcoma, which looked like the fleshy roots of legumes. The roots are not scary when they grow in the ground, but when they grow on people, this scene is creepy. With every breath and every heartbeat of Guy, the sarcoma continued to crawl forward a little, and soon covered his body. If anyone else who can use magic comes here, then he will understand what happened to Guido. Loya's attack just now not only sent in the power of death that consumes life force, but also left his own ice magic as a second-hand preparation. Now Guy's heart is like a melting pot, constantly transforming his own vitality into the power of death. How much vitality the heart can provide him, then the same amount of death force will be born at this moment. The sarcoma that covered Guy's body was actually just the ice that kept spreading under the skin. However, at the same time, these ices filled with the power of death can also absorb a little of Guy's vitality and interfere with his judgment. Although his expression was calm, Guy Duo was in a great panic at this moment. He was able to get to where he is today because of his enormous vitality. Any injury can be healed with this strength, and since he has exercised his ultimate body, he has created the legend of the strongest duel. Just like ordinary people's exercise, the principle is to damage their muscle fibers, and then the recovered muscle fibers will have stronger strength and toughness. But there is a limit to this kind of damage. If the limit is exceeded, then exercise will not only have no effect, but will actually damage the root. And Guy is relying on that terrifying resilience to recover from the near-death state again and again, ignoring the drawbacks caused by excessive exercise, and strengthening his body again and again. The reason why he is keen to commit suicide is actually only because his body has reached an ultimate, and ordinary methods can no longer make him injured, so he cannot get the enhancement effect, so he uses suicide to force himself to become stronger. In the final analysis, it all depends on his huge vitality. And right now, this power is dissipating rapidly. And there is also something unknown that is eroding his body, making those muscles that have been trained to ultimate stiffen and lose their former vitality. How can Guy not be surprised? How can he not be afraid? Since ascending the throne of the Four Emperors, this is the first time that Guy Duo has felt the threat of death at close range. He naturally saw the thing on his chest, but because it was connected to his heart, Guy didn't remove it the first time. But if you let it go, you will still die if you keep going. Immediately, Guy bit Kiba one more time and shoved his thick fingers into his chest, looking at the posture, as if he was about to pull it out. Stop him. Of course, Loya wouldn't let go of the opportunity to beat the underdog. Seeing Guy's many movements, he shouted and slammed straight into it. Although he didn't understand the reason, but seeing how panicked Guy's movements were, Aokiji and Kizaru understood that Roha's attack had worked. So following Loya, the two activated their fruit abilities, and ice and light flickered in the dim desert once again. Boom! Loya knew that he was too far away to stop Guy's actions. So he chose to hit Guy's arm directly, so that he couldn't complete the action of digging. Guy was bumped by Loya, his palm directly attached to the meatball, and he pressed down heavily. Following this, his heart also stopped for a while, and a piercing pain swept through his brain instantly. Ah! After the battle, Guy Duo finally made his first scream. You! This bastard! Guy gasped intermittently, his face grim, and he punched Loya fiercely. But knowing that consumption is victory, Loya would be foolish to fight against him. One dodged Gai Duo's attack, Kizaru filled the gap, and a set of combined punches landed on Gai Duo's chest mercilessly. Kizaru's combined punch. Of course it's a laser plus light speed kick. There were dazzling golden lights flashing in the air constantly, and the continuous explosions caused Gai to be disgraced. But more importantly, Kizaru attacked his chest insidiously, and the pain caused Gai was unbearably painful. Every time, he felt a kind of pain that his heart was about to shatter. Naturally, he heard the shrill screams. If he didn't attack with such an obvious weakness, Kizaru truly deserved the name of his general. Because of the explosion, some injured Aokiji didn't go to take Kizaru's job, and he released a lot of ice cubes again and again, interfering with Gai's actions. If Gai was able to get out of the ice with a little extra effort before, now he needs a few tries to get out. In this regard, Kizaru and Aokiji's eyes are getting brighter and brighter. As far as the current form is concerned, there are many wins over Gai, and there is a good chance. And kill Gai more. It's not impossible. Chapter 380 What a Man. For the addition of the Big Gai Dreamer. Most of the creatures, their internal organs are weak points. Of course, except for the jellyfish, the racial talent cannot be learned. But of course Gai doesn't have this talent. His external defense is still against the sky, armament hockey is extraordinarily hard. No matter how the three attack, there is no way to take him. However, the bulge of ice on the chest is different. It is directly connected to Gai's heart. Every attack is equivalent to a heavy punch to Gai's heart. Gai's body is more defensive than Hai's. Lu Shi is still exaggerated, but the toughness of the internal organs is not comparable to that of iron. As for the iron block, the three present express their ease and comfort. Bang! Roha scratched Gai's chest with a paw, and while grabbing it, he flicked his fingers hard. As the ice was squeezed, Gai screamed in pain, and then hurriedly waved his fist to stop Roha's next step. Actions. Until now, the three of them were all panting, but their eyes became more and more determined. Because compared with the previous ones, the current Gai is undoubtedly much more miserable. A large amount of blood spilled from the corners of his mouth, and every time he opened his mouth, pungent blood erupted. His long, messy hair was now even more embarrassed, and the sweat on his head wetted them and stuck them together. In addition to the external embarrassment, Gai Duo's state at the moment is even more unbearable. His fists became weaker and weaker each time, and his breath became weaker and weaker. Although the magnitude is small, the four of them all know that if they continue to fight, Gai will be exhausted to death here. Gai understands this more. He didn't want to pull out the ice before, because even him, it would be very uncomfortable to suffer from this kind of external trauma. But as the fight continued, the situation had evolved to the point where he couldn't pull the ice out. Every time he made a change, Kizaru would instantly stop him. Compared with Loya's flight, the lightspeed movement of Kayabashi is undoubtedly more suitable for this work. And if Kizaru is forced to retreat, then Loya and Aokiji will fill his vacancy, trying every means to prevent Gai from succeeding. Although it was the first time to fight with the two generals, as the battle continued, Loya and them cooperated more easily, like old comrades in arms for many years. Just as the battle was going on in an orderly manner, Gai Duo suddenly opened and closed, ignoring the defense and forcing the three back, and then turned around and ran away in large strides under the stunned eyes of Loya. If his cognition is still within the range of a normal person, Gai's behavior now seems to be running away, right? How many times did the four Emperor Gais run away? How dare you believe it? What are you doing? Chasing. Xingzi slapped Loya to wake him up, then stirred up the ice, and quickly attached Gai's ankles. Kazuna also turned into a golden light, accelerated his movement with an 8-foot mirror, and then kicked Gai Duo with a golden hook upside down. Bang! The thick golden light Jinchuriki column appears again. First, his ankle was frozen, and then he was kicked by Kizaru at the speed of light from the sky. Even under normal circumstances, Gai had to take a half step back, not to mention that he was not at the level at all. Therefore, this kick of the yellow monkey has reached an unprecedented achievement, but I don't know if there are any comers. That is to kick Guy more and vomit blood. If it was the past, seeing Guy running away, Kizaru and Aokiji would definitely stop their attacks. Because they knew that Guy couldn't be killed, otherwise he wouldn't be alive after being captured so many times. Beating Guy is more than a victory, let alone letting him escape. But now it's different. Because of Royana's weird ability, the two saw the opportunity to kill Guy more. As admirals, how could they give up such a God-given opportunity? Regardless of his balance, of course, the more the four emperors die, the better. As a result, the two of them made big moves frequently, giving Guy no chance to escape at all. When he came back to his senses, Luoya smacked his lips, regretted a few words, and kept up with the team. It's not that he didn't think about getting Guy's powerful corpse. If he lets Guy go away, it may not be completely unchanged, but after Guy's death, it will be his own combat power. It's a pity that Aokiji and Kizaru are not ready to let him leave now. And once Guy is killed here, his body will definitely be used by the world government to make a big fuss about his victory. At that time, it will be a question whether or not Guy should be revived. However, Loya smiled and chose to continue shooting without hesitation. Only dead pirates are good pirates, and Loya and Akainu are surprisingly consistent on this point. Since he became the fourth emperor, Guy Duo has been planning the largest and most fierce war in the world, while seeking a breakthrough by committing suicide everywhere, but now when he really faced death, Guy Duo suddenly found that he was afraid. But what he feared was not death, but the unwillingness caused by the unfulfilled plan. Am I really going to die here today? Guy can't help but mutter in his heart. Do not. I must not die here. I still have unfulfilled dreams. My journey is not over yet. Suddenly, Guy was more imposing, and a wave of death and resurrection resolutely poured into his heart. Haven't enjoyed the greatest war yet, die like this, and be used by the Navy to brag about his exploits, that's definitely not what Guy wants. He still has a whole card not used. How could it be so easy to be driven to a dead end? Thinking of this, Guy resisted Kizaru's attack hard, put his palms together into a knife, and stabbed it into his chest fiercely. Seeing Guy's actions, the three of them thought it was Guy's replay, trying to clear the ice, so all kinds of powerful attacks hit him mercilessly, trying to destroy his plan. But at this moment, Guy Duo is grinning. Bang! Rumbling! Laugh! Under the shocked gazes of the three, Guy stabbed the palm knife into his chest with the powerful force of the attack. How dare he do this? Wasn't he afraid that he would hit his heart too hard and pierce his heart? They all knew how strong the attack of the three people just now was. Even if Guy was still healthy, this series of attacks could open his arms. But to the surprise of the three of them, Guy seemed to have the determination to die, and the strength in his hands was beyond everyone's expectations. Even if they joined forces, they still did not shake the arm one bit. The blood flowed out in large gulps. Guy opened his mouth, and a large pool of bruised blood accompanied by fragments of internal organs was sprayed out by him, dyeing Yuhi a large area of sand. It's still a little too heavy to start by myself, and there are probably 2 more finger holes in the heart. However, in order to resist the three of them joining forces, these are inevitable results. In Guy Duo, who was invisible to everyone, the big hand inserted into his chest slowly bent, holding the ice cube embedded in his ribs. Then, how hard Guy pulls out. Puff! This is a scalp-numbing picture. Those sarcomas that had penetrated deep into Guy Duo's body, along with Guy Duo's movements, directly penetrated the skin, adhered to the flesh and blood, and were pulled out together. Even in Guy Duo's hand, there is that rib that has become cold. This time, he turned out to be a belt bone, and uprooted the ice cube that Loya planted in his body. Regardless of whether the two sides are opponents or not, at this moment, Loya has to give Guy a thumbs up and sigh with emotion. What a man.